And around to Neighbors. Has a crease. Malik Neighbors down the sideline. Stays in bounds with a cutback. House call. Another LSU touchdown.
Welcome to Sikkim 365 Radio.
DeVito throws short. They'll pitch it back. Here's Williams, so dangerous in the open field. He's going to throw it backwards. That's well executed. Ball pops up in the air. Still a chance. Another lateral. Now it's the quarterback, DeVito. He throws it backwards. It's going to hit the turf. Scooped up by the Bulldogs. And they're going to go the other way. A touchdown. Marcus Banks on the final play of the game to cap off this win.
Sikkim 365 Radio is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Showing some late pressure. It's a run. And busting free is Singleton. Nick Singleton in a foot race. One that he will win. Touchdown, Penn State. 87 yards.
Sikkim 365 Radio is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Bynum in motion. Trips right. Williams rolls out that way. Fires. Touchdown in the back of the end zone. Rice.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Oh, we're going to have a safety. Jenkins with the tackle. And it's a safety, and they'll get the football on the kick.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And good afternoon on 365 Sports on this Tuesday, January 3rd. We have a lot to get to, but also in a very unique way how we start today's show with news, of course, on Damar Hamlin from yesterday's story on Monday Night Football. Craig and Paul, we have a three-way text at times that usually is about guests and maybe some other sports news that we look at and the possibility of segments. And then yesterday it started to... the murmur about what was going on. I had the game on. I was not paying a lot of attention to it and just wondered if maybe somebody had done something that was an injury that we see a lot in pro sports. And then, of course, the story turned completely different and one that just absolutely encapsulated the entire sports world and the nation on Damar Hamlin, who is right now still in critical condition. We'll read a statement in a moment from the family, but we have seen players go down. We've seen carts come out. We've seen players who have had some spinal injuries. We've seen a lot of that. I don't know if we have ever, in football reasons or football, stories, seen what we saw last night with Damar Hamlin.
No, it was very tragic and bizarre. And, I think the thing that scares the entire football watching public is, it's been over a half a day now since it happened, and we don't know anything. So I'm hoping that means that that's good news and that eventually Damar Hamlin will be out of the woods. But, it's just really scary and just, not knowing anything. I can't imagine what it's like to be a member of his family, a member of the Bills, a member of the Bengals who had to sit there and see it last night. Just really, really hard. Knowing how hard it was for all of us to have to watch it, and none of us know Damar Hamlin or anything like that. It's just tragic to see someone go through that, especially while they're living their dream.
Yeah, it was scary stuff. It was frightening to see, that occur and, to not have any clue why or how or, what was to come. I mean, for all we knew, that was going to be, a death announcement at some point on SportsCenter. I mean, that could have very well been that. I think, the hardest part that people are having to deal with is that reality's been smashed. And reality's actually set in of like, oh, wow, this probably should happen way more given the game that's being played. And we're very fortunate that it hasn't probably happened, instances like that before or on a more regular basis. I mean, we have no idea what's the cause. I mean, people were so quick to put their agendas out there on whatever they thought the cause was going to be. It was just kind of sickening. Like, let's just breathe and acknowledge this man in, an obvious state of health crisis, and then worry about the details later. And so now I think we're all curious about the details, just to simply have an explanation for why this happened and what could possibly have caused this, whether it be an underlying heart issue, which we've seen in sports before, or whether it be, I don't know, something to do with head and it's anyone's guess at this point. That's why it's probably not good to guess at all. But I think everybody's absolutely curious on what could possibly have gone wrong because, none of us have ever seen this thing before. So I think reality is set in of like, oh, wow, this is a very dangerous game. And we know that and we say that, but when you go and you watch it and there's like 10 games on every weekend and nothing really ever happens to that extent, week after week after week after week, and then all of a sudden it does happen. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. It's like, really? I can't believe it hasn't happened way more often, quite honestly, with you. And still not knowing exactly what caused it. Might not have been anything football related. It might have been some underlying health thing, as I said a moment ago. So yeah, it was frightening to watch that unfold. It was a bit bizarre because it didn't feel sort of real there at times. Just how quiet that stadium was, the scrambling of, the ESPN's broadcast to try and, fill time, quite frankly, and also figure out some answers as well as best they could. And I think that that was a lesson for a lot of people on the ESPN side of things of, I was just shocked that they just left. Like, they kept just going to their announcers, just like telling them to, basically keep talking. It's like, what do you say? Like, after a little while, if you're Joe Buck, like, what do you possibly say? If you're Susie Colbert, they keep going back to you in the studio, and it's very clear Booger doesn't have anything to say. Like, I wouldn't have been able to fill airtime because I would have just been like, well, I mean, what do you say to this? But they just kept going to him, so I give a lot of credit to the media folks who had to sit there and go on camera in that moment and talk somehow or another. And credit to the medical staff for hopefully being quickly acting enough to have prevented an even far greater tragedy. But yeah, it's got everybody's head spinning, got everybody feeling weird, and we're all just, I think, hopeful that this turns out to be a happy ending, even though it's still obviously touch and go as far as the news and as far as his condition goes.
Ask Michael DeHart on the chat room, and a lot of you are giving your information of what you have experienced. Ask Michael DeHart. It gets your attention in a hurry. No kidding. I've been on a couple of SCAs, sudden cardiac arrest due to trauma. So, Mike, ask Michael if you want to kind of give us a couple of analogies or at least an idea of what it was, what created it, what caused it. We will have today Dr. Neelish Goswami. He's going to be with us, interventional cardiologist, director of cardiac cath lab at Baylor Scott & White Hillcrest here in Waco, and he will join us to kind of give us an idea. I contacted Matt Rohr, who is like high up the chain, like really high up the chain at Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine, and also a sponsor of this show. And he said, I have the perfect guy for you, as they were trading text yesterday in the evening. I thought that what they did initially, it was kind of like treading water. And then I thought when they brought in Ryan Clark and Scott Van Pelt and even Troy Aikman or even Booker McFarland, I thought at least they could start to give us a little bit of an idea of what it's like to be a player on the field. And, they do play a game that's very violent. But I'm trying, I cannot believe, I was trying to think of an example of this, and I don't want to bring it up, but I guess the only one where I've ever seen anybody just collapse on the court was when Hank Gathers collapsed.
Yeah, that's
at
what
Loyola Marymount. And of course, there was a lot of hidden issues with him, but at the same time, that's what reminded me of that. Thank God we haven't seen it very often, if at all.
Well, with I really appreciate, like, Ryan Clark was the best person to have available for that because, it's a perspective of his situation where he collapsed on the field, had nothing to do with a collision or anything like that. Although, we don't really know if the collision caused Damar Hamlin's, if it was all part of it, like that's all going to come out later on. But Ryan Clark has sickle cell trait. So he has sickle cell anemia. And because of that, I mean, he had that, incident in Denver where he, had to cling to his life for a little while. And then the story about Mike Tomlin, I thought was really telling, in that he said, look, the way that he was saying, look, the way players approach this game, you want to play. He's like, I had my wife in the room, I had all these doctors. And after 5 minutes, Mike Tomlin said, no, if you were my son, you're not going to go play in that game. He said, sometimes you have to have that. I thought that was a really good story.
Ryan Clark actually said he was relieved that Tomlin said what he said.
But on Damar Hamlin, we just don't know. That's the thing. It's whole hard to talk about because we only know what happened and what they've told us since then, which is one sentence about him. Essentially.
Yeah, like we know nothing. We know nothing of the details. We don't know if it's heart. We don't know if it's brain. We don't know if we have no idea. And that's what's hard to kind of wrap your head around. It reminded me of the Owen Hart thing. And I know that's what a lot of people eventually brought up, which I guess is one of the more neat aspects of social media, is that, you do have people who kind of have the same ideas or the same thoughts that cross during various moments. And so I was sitting there thinking, like, yeah, this reminds me of Owen Hart. And sure enough, like, Owen Hart started trending like within 20 or 30 minutes because a lot of other, I guess, old wrestling fans had the same thought of watching the Over the Edge pay-per-view back in the late 90s. And they were broadcasting from Kansas City, and Owen Hart donned in the blue blazer attire, his alter ego, is rappelling from the rooftop, and it wasn't secure. Like they, it eventually ended up being a multi-million-dollar lawsuit over the people who rigged it up, the apparatus to come down from the ceiling, and that was not done properly, and ended up some release that was not supposed to released him in midair basically, and he fell from a very high point in the arena. And Jason King actually was there. Buddy Jason King was there at Kempner Arena. And Owen Hart fell from a very high spot and ended up, colliding with the turnbuckle and bouncing off of that. And ended up basically dying in the ring, but officially pronounced dead a little while later. And that was a horrific deal. And we didn't even see nearly any of the amount that we saw. Like, you saw replays of him collapsing over and over again, Hamlin. Like, you didn't see any of the Owen Hart thing. It wasn't on camera. They were doing like a promo at the time, and then they just came back to the ring, and you're like, wait, something's wrong. Why is it so quiet? And you see people kind of gathered, and that was the extent of it. Whereas with Hamlin, you saw the replay on Twitter. If you wanted to go watch it right now, you could watch it 1,000 times and watch every reaction and watch everything like that. Point being is they're in the middle of a pay-per-view, and it's like, what do you do? Guy just had this massive accident. It doesn't happen very often ever in the ring. And what do you do? And they went on with the show. The show must go on, Vince McMahon said, basically. And before the show even ended that night, Jim Ross is on there pronouncing Owen Hart, or letting the audience know Owen Hart had passed away from the fall. And they just finished it. And I think that memory really came to me because I'm like, what do you do if you're those NFL execs or the ESPN execs and that suddenly happens and nobody's obviously expecting? I feel like last night, like, they were waiting for Scott Van Pelt to get to the studio just to finally, like, move into SportsCenter, move into a different thing other than, hey, Joe and Troy, tread water, and then every once in a while throw it to the studio and what was it, Susie Colbert, and let them tread
Adam
water.
Schefter and
Booger, and let them tread water. And they just kept, like, throwing it back to each other over and over again, and nobody knew what to say. And so they stopped the show, and I was thankful that they did because it made me think of WWE just pushing through. And still to this day, people who were around at that time, like, I think they just had that mindset back then of the show must go on, like I said. But I think now, all these years removed from it, everybody that was back then, around then, would have said, like, yeah, the NFL made the right call in canceling that. And it felt like they were going to try and push through at points. And I just felt like there's just no way you could have played that game after that occurred. And so I'm glad to see that they eventually came to the determination that they did. And obviously, we still don't know the extent of really anything involving last night, from the injury to that game. And obviously that's the least important thing.
No, it is. And there's no plans on what to do with that game. That game is irrelevant, even though it is important as far as what happens, whoever gets to what seed. Right now, the most important thing is on Damar Hamlin. Here's the statement from the family. On behalf of our family, we want to express our sincere gratitude for the love and support shown to Damar during his challenging time. We are deeply moved by the prayers, kind words, donations from fans around the country. We'll get to that. We also want to acknowledge the dedicated first responders and healthcare professionals, University of Cincinnati Medical Center, who provided exceptional care for Damar. We feel so blessed to be part of the Bills, have their support. Also want to thank Coach Taylor and the Bengals for everything they've done. Your generosity and compassion mean the world to us. Please keep Damar in your prayers. We will release updates as soon as we have them. Thank you, the Hamlin family. Now, you've heard about his charitable work for underprivileged and those who, kids, had $2,500 as a goal. Paul, what is it now that the toy drive is the Chasing M's Foundation Community Toy Drive?
It's $4.7 million and will probably only keep going. And one of the things Scott Van Pelt mentioned last night was, the people of Buffalo. I got to tell you, the last month I've been, and you kind of know this about places like that, but the city of Buffalo kind of understands community better than most cities. And it's a big city. It's not just some, kind of big city. And it's the second largest city in New York. And because they have to go through snow drifts and blizzards and the things like they've gone through, they have this unbelievable sense of community. So when bad things happen, they really come together and come out in force, man. If you are from Buffalo, New York, and you're a part of this and supporting, hats off to you, because the way that city does community better than most in the country is very impressive.
This morning and really overnight, numerous stories about, so who is Damar Hamlin? Yes, he plays for the Buffalo Bills. He played at the University of Pittsburgh and wanted to play nearby so people would be proud of the Pittsburgh football team. He was asked, this is Henry McKenna, is I think the tweet, he was asked about what's important to him aside from football.
The only thing I could think of saying right now is I'm big on family. I'm big on my family unit. My mom, my dad, my little brother, that's pretty much my whole world. Outside of any other thing going on, my life revolves around them. I don't really do too much without my mom and dad's opinion. Whether I take it or whether I don't, but sometimes I just want to hear it, That's just how I was raised, and that's just something I'm big on. So that's all I say, family.
All right, so that's it. To get to know him, and of course, a lot of people just knew maybe he was the defensive back, played for the Buffalo Bills, right? Former Pittsburgh player. And now, of course, his name is everywhere with all the different shows trying to get to know a little bit more about him as he clings to life at the hospital in Cincinnati. Dr. Neelish Goswami is going to join us here in a moment. In fact, in the next segment, and then we'll get into some college football news on Deuce Vaughn, college football news on Jalen Daniels, and also today, a little after 5 o'clock, Brandon Marcello for 247 Sports covers college football and the discussion for Georgia and TCU just around the corner. We will have Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports today, Craig and Paul with Off the Radar and Top 5, and John McClain, Hall of Fame writer, covers the NFL, his thoughts about how the NFL and how the Bills and Bengals reacted to the collapse of Damar Hamlin. This is 365 Sports.
A new truck or SUV from Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillacs, a gift that can't be beat. Make this a memorable holiday season as you can go get a car or truck right now over at Richard Carr. Christmas has passed, but the holidays still going on. Got Valentine's Day coming up, St. Patty's Day after that, plenty more on the way. But Richard Carr right now has trucks and SUVs in stock, dozens of Sierra trucks, dozens of SUVs, the biggest inventory they've had in 2 years. Right now, get 3.9% interest for well-qualified buyers on GMC Sierra and GMC Terrain trucks in stock, 3.99% financing on Buick Encores, Buick Envisions, Buick Enclaves in stock. They've also got dozens of quality pre-owned cars and trucks under $20,000, affordable, thoroughly inspected, ready to finance. They have quality vehicles ready to reliably take you on the road this holiday season. So check out all the great deals now, whether buying new, pre-owned, or just getting work on your car. For 23 years in Central Texas, they've built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Richard Carr, run by proud Central Texans. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Dr. Neelish Goswami, interventional cardiologist, director of cardiac cath lab, Baylor Scott and White, Hillcrest Hospital in Waco. And Dr. Goswami joins us on 365 Sports. Paul Craig and I'm David Smoak. Doctor, again, thanks for your time. I was back and forth today with Matt Rohrer, and he said that you all started trading texts last night. When were you watching the game, or did someone alert you to what was going on? What happened with the timeline with you?
Yeah. Well, as luck would have it, or I shouldn't use the word luck, but what I was doing at the time of the game was dealing with a patient that had a cardiac arrest here, in fact. And so I was just headed home, and I was getting some texts from friends and my brother that I needed to turn on the Monday night game, that they were doing CPR on one of the Bills players.
So walk us through the process a little bit to what would happen in a trauma like this on the field, which is so rare to have to use an AED and to perform CPR on someone when they get an injury.
Yeah. Well, I think you said it correctly. It is rare. And so I think for somebody to be overly prepared for a situation like this would be asking a little too much, right? It's just such an unusual and rare occurrence that I think it's hard for sideline personnel to be ready to jump on a situation so quickly. I think what we're used to seeing, watching this game for so long is orthopedic injuries and the concussions and some neurologic issues. But to see somebody suffer from a cardiac event on the football field, it is very, very unusual.
So, Doctor, to hear what you heard as far as the updates, and we're still very much in the dark on certain things, obviously, but, critical condition, level 1 trauma facility, receiving treatment. Can you kind of explain what that's probably entailing in some cases?
Yeah. Well, I think what we should maybe start at is the point of what's a cardiac arrest, right?
Sure.
Because people have their own interpretation and definitions of what is a cardiac arrest, and then to take it a step further, what's the difference between a cardiac arrest and a heart attack? And because all those words have kind of been thrown in to the discussion with respect to Hamlin's case. So, first of all, a heart attack is basically when one of the arteries to the heart itself gets blocked off, and the heart muscle itself cannot get vital fuel to function properly. And the symptoms of that are typically chest pain, the elephant, sitting on the chest, classic symptoms that we've all seen either on television or read about or seen in a movie. And I think most people are well versed at picking that up. What's not so clear is this entity of a cardiac arrest. And so a cardiac arrest, whereas a heart attack is more of a plumbing issue. We're not getting adequate amounts of blood into the muscle due to a blockage in the fuel line, if you will. Cardiac arrest is more of an electrical issue. So the rhythm of the heart, which is normally very consistent and repetitive, now becomes erratic to the point where it is not contracting in an organized fashion, and there's no output of blood to all the vital organs in the body. So each time the heart contracts, it's squeezing blood to your brain, to your kidneys, to your liver, to your legs, every part of the body. If there is no organized contraction, blood cannot be delivered to these vital organs. And the result of that is you collapse, right? And if that rhythm is not resuscitated or converted back to normal, this could result in death. It could be fatal.
Dr. Goswami, how long, as far as every second counts, right, before the CPR, before they start getting oxygen where it needs to be or blood where it needs to be?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's specific to each organ system, right? So, if we talk about the most fragile organ system first, it's the brain. So the brain typically stops functioning or gets injured or damaged within 4 to 6 minutes of no oxygen. And that's the most critical organ. And it's the most fragile organ. So that's probably the first organ that we see some damage occurring if CPR or the rhythm is not restored within minutes, 4 to 6 minutes. The heart itself, an artery can be blocked off for hours and we can open it and we can still get some recovery. There is some mild amount of damage, but we could still get substantial recovery even hours later. If you block off the artery to your leg, you can probably live with that for 6 hours, right? But in this situation and in most situations of cardiac arrest, we are most concerned about the brain. And so the key is initiating CPR in a quick, timely fashion. And then not only initiating it, doing it properly where it's effective, where we're actually pushing blood to the vital organs and maintaining that oxygen level.
So one of the most troubling things about this for everybody is we've heard very little about what's gone on, and it's been, quite a long time since last night. Is that typical in situations like this? And again, it's reckless to be speculative, but what kind of goes on in these periods where you're trying to investigate the cause of of the cardiac arrest?
Yeah. So, I'll just address cardiac arrest in general, kind of as patients come into the hospital. They typically get resuscitated first. That's critical, right? So if CPR is still ongoing, the treatment, the most common rhythm abnormality for these cardiac arrest patients is something called ventricular fibrillation. And the way you treat ventricular fibrillation is you shock the patient. So these patients need an AED if they're outside the hospital. If they're in the hospital, we have dedicated defibrillators, and you can shock the rhythm back to normal. And so CPR is critical, number one step, because most people can do CPR without any additional equipment. You just need your hands. And the second most critical piece to this in terms of resuscitation is an AED, a defibrillator. So those are the two things we kind of focus on first. And then after the patient stabilized, it depends. If you get to them quick enough and you get the rhythm back quick enough, they typically wake up and there's really no injury, because if it's less than a few minutes, we haven't created any injury yet. So the patient typically is almost nearly back to normal instantaneously. Now, if the event lasts for some period of time, you go over that 6-minute mark, then we may start to see some effects of injury to the brain. And that would essentially may represent itself as a coma or just inability to respond, inability to wake up. And again, as you stated, it's hard to speculate, what's happened in his particular situation, Hamlin's particular situation, but I'm just talking in generalities here. So if the neurologic status is in question, then sometimes these patients get put on ventilators to breathe for them, to protect their airway, so we can oxygenate the blood that is circulating now throughout the body. And then in a lot of cases, if they aren't waking up or showing signs of any meaningful neurologic recovery immediately, we will perform something called therapeutic hypothermia, where you cool the body down. And so you've probably all heard of these cases where drowning victims, under the ice, they were under there for 20, 30 minutes and they survived and really had no deficit. Well, why is that? It's because we've come to learn that if we cool the body down, the amount of injury caused to the body is a lot less than if the body stays warm. And so that's a practice that's quite common in patients after a cardiac arrest.
We are today joined by Neelish Goswami. He, again, is a part of Baylor Scott and White Hillcrest Hospital, director of cardiac cath lab. And there's a first responder who watches our show. He said, has he ever seen a case involving chest trauma that caused sudden cardiac arrest where the impact was during the T wave of the heart that started cardiac arrest? Does that question make sense to you?
Yeah. So there is an entity in kind of talking to other cardiologists last night and this morning. I mean, we've all kind of tried to hypothesize what happened, right? Everyone wants to know what happened. And again, I'm respectful of his privacy and the situation there with their family, and we deal with that on a day-to-day basis. But I think, as far as a hypothesis is that traumatic hit precipitated a cardiac arrest. And so there is a condition that can do that called commotio cordis, which is a Latin word for basically an erratic heartbeat. And what can happen in that situation if a blunt force blow is delivered in the perfect spot in the chest at the perfect time. And what this T wave is he's referring to is, on the EKG, there's all these little glitches. And one of the little glitches is called a T wave. And if the blow comes, this is milliseconds, right? The blow has to come 10 to 30 milliseconds below the peak of the T wave, and it'll create this sudden cardiac death situation. And so this is an extremely rare condition. This occurs, there's actually a registry in the United States for this particular condition, and they usually get about 10 to 15 updates a year, right? So this is not something that occurs often. And it can occur during a baseball game where a baseball player gets hit in the chest with a high velocity pitch. Softball, hockey players, hockey puck, lacrosse ball, and football. These are the most common sports where this condition can occur.
When you saw the ambulance on the field, and of course everybody surrounding the situation with Damar Hamlin, and I know that sometimes we have to stop and, like, my goodness, first responders, those who help you, what you do, those in the medical business, the trainers, the doctors, the team doctors, the Bills, the Bengals. I mean, it seemed like, thank God, there were a lot of people right there in a hospital that was not very far away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the timing is crucial. I think, it's like anyone else's field, right? The more you do something, the more comfortable you are with it and the more comfortable you are seeing it. And in cardiology, unfortunately, we see cardiac arrest quite frequently. And the vast majority of those, I'd say 99% of those, are in the hospital where we have equipment, nurses and drugs. And like you said, medical personnel that are trained to handle this. And we form a team approach, and each person of that team knows their role, and we can get this addressed very quickly. What we're not used to seeing is this happen to a 24-year-old young man who's a professional athlete on a football field, right? Mm-hmm. Again, our typical injuries are orthopedic injuries. They're not medical emergencies for the vast majority of the time. And so, their staffing and expertise is more focused on that. Now, I think once they recognize quickly it was not an orthopedic issue or necessarily a neurologic issue, they did what they're trained to do, initiated CPR, got the AED, I presume delivered the shock and restored the rhythm. But it's never, even as I was watching it as a cardiologist, I was still shocked like everyone else because you just don't expect to see it in that setting, right?
Mm-hmm. And so, obviously, Paul brought this up. The statement was released by the family. There was some information released by the Bills late into the night, and now still in critical condition. And right now, just trying to keep his body, right, just calm, sedated. Is that kind of what, and I'm not asking you to guess, I'm just asking you in these particular cases, what now is important?
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on what the neurologic status is, again, because that kind of will dictate how they treat. If we do have a patient that has some neurologic impairment or evidence of potential brain injury, like I said, we cool those patients. That'll occur for 24 hours, the cooling, and then you would slowly warm them up after that. And so this, if that's the case, or in those cases where there are some concerns about brain injury, that could take 2 days to kind of decipher and clarify. If there's evidence that he's awake and moving things and following commands, then really the next step is to, number one, make sure the blood pressure and the rhythm stay in a normal range. So those are, our vital signs that we typically monitor. And then the next thing after that would be to get him extubated or get him off that ventilator to where he could breathe on his own.
We have a lot of people that watch this show, and Dr. Goswami, a lot of people very impressed and also thankful for kind of helping clarify and give us some knowledge of differences that happen with heart trauma, et cetera, reactions. And we appreciate your time so much. We appreciate you, and have a great day.
Oh, it was my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on, and I'm hopeful for a full recovery for this young man.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Dr. Neelis Goswami, interventional cardiologist, director of the Cardiac Cath Lab, Baylor Scott & White, Hillcrest Hospital. Thanks to Matt Rohr for helping set up that segment with us as well. And a lot of you in the chat room saying that you've learned quite a bit just in the last 15 to 18 minutes, as did I, and the differences between cardiac arrest, heart attack, et cetera. And again, what he said in S. Michael DeHart, this is a perfect storm. It was just, as you saw what he said about the milliseconds and whatever else and where it was hit, the chest, et cetera, and we appreciate the explanation from Dr. Goswami. All right, when we come back, a few notes, college football. Your continual text line open, 254-339-1122. And I want to say this to Michael DeHart again. Ask Michael DeHart, who sent us a really nice super chat yesterday. Appreciate your insight. He has had to treat trauma, a train and truck accident, and trying to save somebody, and what you deal with as first responders. We appreciate you. This is 365 Sports. The city of Woodway is moving now into yet another concert that's coming up. And in fact, it's pretty cool what they're doing. Discover Woodway, two-time Grammy Award-winning Oza Motley, February the 1st, will be live at the Pavilion Event Center in Woodway. Tickets available online. Go to discoverwoodway.com, where you can find out a lot of information about the concert, about their various amenities and facilities that they have, and also even events coming up for youth during the spring and summer. Partnership with the Waco Family and Faith International Film Festival, Oza Motley, live in Waco, Woodway, February 1st, Grammy Award-winning team event and group, live at the Pavilion Event Center in Woodway. Go to discoverwoodway.com for more information and also to buy your tickets.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like First Free Checking, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance, and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com, or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Text us at 254-339-1122. The Sikkim 365 Radio text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
One of the text questions to us, is it possible he had underlying heart condition? We'll learn that hopefully after there is good news that DeMar Hamlin at some point recovers from the trauma from last night. There's always the possibility of something underlying, but that would have just been guessing because we don't know. But thanks for the text. We appreciate all of you in the chat room, a lot of you that were fed some damn good information, honestly, with Dr. Goswami. Now, college football news. Deuce Vaughn. Man, what a great player he was at Kansas State. He is entering the NFL draft. He could have come back for another year. I'm sure Kansas State fans would love to have seen him. I'm sure everybody else who has to face Kansas State did not want to have to see him again. He had the long run against Alabama early on in the Sugar Bowl that eventually Alabama just put on the afterburners. What a career from the young man from Cedar Ridge High School in Round Rock. A fantastic career from Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn's one of those guys that the other coaches in the Big 12, like he's gonna walk into his house one day like, oh, he's a giant fruit. Is this from Brent Venables? Well, that was nice. Glad that he's not going to be in the league anymore. He's going in, and so is Spears, the running back from Tulane. That they were separated at birth or something, because they remind me very much. I mean, they're super small, but super fast. And when they have the ball in their hands, the other team's like, I don't want to deal with it.
Brando yesterday telling us, Craig, that he thought Spears was kind of a clone, but much faster. And I saw an NFL scout say, or NFL draft guru saying something about that. He is absolutely in love with Spears, the running back at Tulane, and looks to see what he might eventually do in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a shame that maybe more people are just now catching on to him. But, yeah, I mean, if you were on that a little bit earlier and you got to watch a bunch of Tyjae Spears, then, yeah, I mean, that's not a surprise to you to hear that. I mean, he's a very well-rounded, very good player. And, yeah, I don't think we've by any means heard the last of him lighting it up in the game of football. But, yeah, I think both those guys, Spears and Vaughn, are, just great players that made college football a lot more fun, especially this past season. Really, longer than that, but, recency bias this past season, I think, has really built up for a fun ending. Had one of the best weekends probably all time in college football history, given the way those semifinals played out. And, yeah, while Tulane was able to get the big win yesterday over USC, K-State wasn't able to finish as strong, but still really enjoyed watching both those guys. Not surprised by either's decision. I think with Deuce Vaughn, there was some thought that you could entertain the idea of him coming back, given his height, that might hurt him, at the next level, and likely will hurt him to some extent at the next level. But it being the running back position, that kind of negates some of those other things. You're not going to get any taller. So, what are you going to come back to Manhattan and do for K-State other than possibly go to the playoff and win a national title? And, sometimes that dream, like, I'm going to come back and run it back, and it works. And then sometimes it's not anywhere close to what you imagine. So he goes out on a high note and goes out a Big 12 champion and goes out as one of the greatest Wildcats of all time, and they've had a lot. But, yeah, that's going to be a big loss for them next year. I think, they're still going to be super strong with Will Howard there at quarterback, but you're going to need guys like DJ Giddens to obviously step up in a major way, because that's a huge loss for them. So they'll also lose Malik Knowles. So that's two of their better players that'll be out the door. But, yeah, Deuce Vaughn, great player. Up for the Earl Campbell Award last year, did not win it, but I know that, he and both Chris Kleiman, who were there at the ceremony, by the time the night was over with, they had made a lot of new Kansas State fans, or just fans of them, because they really carried themselves and represented K-State very well. So big Deuce Vaughn fan, and wish him nothing but the best at the next level.
He joined us last year on the day of the event, of the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award banquet. Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels Man, how good was he in that comeback for Kansas in the bowl game that fell short, triple overtime? Signs an NIL deal with Adidas. And because, and this is from On3, this is our good friend that covers all of that for On3, because Kansas is Adidas, he can wear or represent them with the uniform.
You know, and this is going to get me in trouble. I'll say this right now. But I'll deal with it when I get home, if she hears it. But Kansas is in trouble in the basketball side for players getting paid. This is why the NCAA thing with Kansas and Adidas is going to go absolutely nowhere. Because right now, the public fervor for it is pretty much over unless you just want to see Kansas and Bill Self punished. But so Kansas is in trouble. And the federal government investigated them and many other schools for these shady deals with Adidas. And now the quarterback at Kansas is getting paid by Adidas publicly to endorse it. That's how stupid the rules were before, in that just 3 years after you come down in a school for doing the exact thing that now you are, it just, the way the world's going, sometimes I don't understand. I'm not trying to be this it was better back in 84. And maybe it was. But I will tell you, there are so many things now that we used to hear complained about. The school companies are giving people money. Well, now look, they're right out there endorsing Jalen Daniels, as he should have a right as an American to do, because it's his name and Adidas wants to partner with him, and that's awesome. Or you know what? I'm a ticket company. I'm a venue. Scalping is killing me. All right, let's make that illegal. Also, let's become the scalpers. That's what they've done on that side. It's insane. It's absolutely nuts how we just, instead of easing into something, we just make the illegal thing legal. Then.
Texting recruits back in the day. Yeah.
Sports gambling's bad. Now it's all you see over any event or any, conversation for that matter eventually turns into that. If you talk about it long enough, probably, that's not an area that I dabble in, because first of all, it's not even legal in Texas. So that's just kind of like I know you can get around that, but I just have no interest in the extra effort. I don't care that much about it. But I mean, that was, just completely off limits. And now, I mean, it's just, here's MLB, the same league that banned Pete Rose, is go to FanDuel and bet on the next guy to hit a home run. It's wild.
On a 3-2 pitch.
Yeah. But it's just the changing of the world. I mean, getting back to Jalen Daniels, great player, obviously, not the best ending for Kansas, in terms of losing their bowl game, but a valiant effort, even if they did get a little help from the Zebras that helped keep that game as close as it was at a very crucial point. But, they fought hard, nearly got themselves a tremendous win. And I just don't understand why the guy who's now sponsored by Adidas wasn't throwing that last ball. I don't understand.
Yeah,
I mean, there's moments where it happens, you just get overwhelmed, your brain's going a million miles an hour and all that. But for Kansas to not have the ball in the hands of Jalen Daniels on the most important play of the season to end the season and try to get so cute and give it to Jason Bean, who, with all due respect, did admirably in relief, really, played pretty well at times. But he did not need to be the guy who's determining whether or not you're going to win your bowl game. That's just, I'm sure Lance Leipold's had some sleepless moments just thinking about why did we try to get so cute and take the ball out of the absolute best player on the field's hands. I don't get that. And I know at the same time it's one of those, well, if it had worked, we'd have been calling it genius. But I just don't think that you take the ball out of his hands. Very deserving of the Adidas, sponsorship, though. And I'm just kind of surprised this is really one of the first guys we've heard about something like this with, right? We haven't heard a bunch of guys signing Nike deals, and we haven't heard about a bunch of guys signing Under Armour deals or even Adidas deals for that matter. When that became something that you could do, I just thought there would be a flood of you'd have Nike commercials and you'd be here's Bryce Young and here's whoever you want to throw in, here's DJU and here's, and the full-blown Nike ads. And I don't really feel like we've seen that at all unless I've missed it. I mean, maybe little things here and there, like a magazine picture or something, but not at all what I thought it was going to be. I thought it'd be full bore. And so it's kind of interesting that this is one of the first guys you've really heard about that signed an apparel deal. So cool, obviously with the Adidas Kansas connection makes all the sense in the world, and I'm sure we'll hear more about this for guys. But, yeah, well-deserved and really fun player to watch, and very interested to see, their little trajectory as they, take some momentum and try to run with it through this offseason.
Yeah, Adidas is jumping right into it. They've mentioned it. And, in fact, I saw a note where it says that all athletes at Division I schools with Adidas partners are eligible for NIL with them. More than 50,000 athletes at 109 schools across 23 sports qualified for some sort of NIL with Adidas. I'm not sure if all of them or part of it or what, but that's that with that. Now, remember Tyler Algier, the running back at Brigham Young who was so good? How about this? This was after the Falcons game yesterday. He became only the second rookie in Falcons history to rush for at least 900 yards and score 3 rushing touchdowns in his rookie year. William Andrews, in 1979, who really had a nice little run early in his career, he needs 124 yards this week, the last week of the season, to pass Andrews' regular season rushing record for a rookie. And good for Tyler Algier, who, of course, Baylor faced him last year in Waco at McLean Stadium, Baylor winning the game, and he's on his way to have a nice run, at least so far, with the Atlanta Falcons.
If Des Ridder works out as the quarterback there, I think that the Falcons have a nice little – they've got Drake London. They'll have Kyle Pitts back when he's healthy. They have Tyler Algier. They've got something to build on. And then, kind of a wily veteran now in Cordero Patterson on offense. Now, they've got a lot to fix, but ask the Titans how badly they miss Arthur Smith calling their plays, their coach and the Falcons coach. And I think that they've got a bright future. I like what they've got going on there. I've always been a fan of Arthur Blank, maybe just because when we were at the tournament that time, we were in the food line together, and he was very friendly to me. And I thought, well, this guy didn't have to do that. But I've always been a fan of Arthur Blank. He takes care of his people all up and down. So, rooting for him and hope the Falcons can turn it around because, I want to see the NFC South be interesting again.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Tyler Algier, great player. Obviously had a terrific college career, and great to see him, thriving in the pros. Unlike his former quarterback there at BYU, who's very much not thriving in the pros and is possibly on his way, or probably on his way to being one of the great all-time busts, you would say. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of those guys that you mentioned when you think of, who's one of the biggest busts, like Zach Wilson, BYU is going to be mentioned with Jamarcus Russell and players like that, most likely, the way it's going. So, good for them to have something better to hang their hat on, since Wilson was kind of like it's going to be the big star, and it's not turned out that way. So good to have something offsetting that, and be interesting, here over the next few months to kind of expand our scope in terms of, we've already been talking about a lot of the new 4 and all that, but they're not going to be the new 4 anymore. There's going to be Big 12 teams, and that means not only, talking about them a bit more in depth and including them in the conversation with the other 10 for this next year at least. But, looking outside and looking at what Desmond Ritter's doing and, a lot of the success that Cincinnati's seemingly starting to have based on, the run last year and some of the guys that have gone off into the pros and guys over the last couple of years, and obviously Houston and UCF as well. So, cool to have some new teams to talk about, some new players to talk about.
When we come back, he works at CBS Sports. He's a columnist, covers college football. His thoughts about TCU and their game in the national championship with Georgia. His thoughts about many things college football. Dennis Dodd will join us, CBS Sports, next on 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas. Dr. Steve Childress. Who was it, Garrett? Was it you?
It was me.
The other day on Friday when you and I were flying, you were a co-pilot with me, right?
I was.
You had a tooth pulled.
I did. Dr. Childress hooked me up. He was not pleased with me. He let me know about it. He got me enrolled in the plan, and I will definitely be there to see him in March.
You waited too long, right,
I waited
Garrett?
too long, Smokey.
Yep, he's told me that before a couple of different times, and that's why when I discussed Dr. Steve Childress and Stonewood Dental, he finally got my mind right, and now my dental work is better, and it's still a daily progress, and he is the one that I trust with all of what I need, whether it's teeth cleaning, with whoever he has as a hygienist at that particular time, with my appointments, to something more serious like getting a tooth pulled, like Garrett, or maybe even a root canal, or something else that could happen if you don't take care of your dental work. And I'm telling you, it's not going to be one of those where you can just say, it's going to be okay. It will come back to haunt you. Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress in Robinson, Texas.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Sausage wrap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, who right now is on a conference call with the NCAA Transformational Committee with news coming from Julie Cromer. Dr. Livingstone at Baylor is on that committee as well. He has a time to kind of help us a little bit with this. Dennis, thanks for your time.
No, well, I'm going to call him in 5 or 6 minutes.
Oh, I thought you said we had
right
5 or 6 minutes. Okay, good. Okay, that's fine. We're in good shape right now. But one of the things, a couple of quotes on his timeline, while this is the end of this particular committee, the Transformational Committee, this is not the end of the NCAA's transformation. Of course, they started this to try to fix a few things, not with the sluggish mentality of what the NCAA has done before, to look at new ideas. One of the things he mentioned here, well, we'll get to him in a little bit on that with Dennis Dodd and a couple of his notes on what is going on with that conference call. How about this stat? And this is not a graphic. Zach Barnett, Football Scoop, the Pac-12, and this is, we don't sit there and try to look at specific. I know they got the Big 12, Pac-12, got into a cat fight, and some media even did that. But he mentioned this after USC lost to Tulane in that stunning ending. The Pac-12 has not made the college football playoff in the last 6 years. Their record in New Year's 6 games during that time is 1-7.
Wow. I don't even really think about that year to year, but yeah, that's troubling if you're a Pac-12 fan.
Or maybe a school. And of course, this comes and goes. Certain conferences have had, I mean, the Big 12, my God, they were 2-6 thanks to Texas Tech and TCU for winning their 2 games.
Yeah, so I don't know, but I mean, bowl games are a hard thing to measure things on, especially now where you don't even know who's going to come back. Does it benefit you to even play in this game? Players are opting out, and it's just everything's changing. And then that metric is going to be even harder 2 years from now to figure out when the 12-team playoff is there. Like there's going to be the playoff games that'll be kind of easy to judge your performance on and your postseason performance on, but everything else, like, does this get accelerated? Do more people start playing in bowls because there's NIL opportunities? There's just too many questions to even know how to measure a bowl record.
Well, there's clearly going to be more guys playing in these playoff games. I mean, I'm
talking about the other bowl games.
Yeah, I mean, that part of it, I don't think we're going to have an answer to until we get there. That's something that's going to have to wait to be figured out. I think that'll be where the bowls have to, figure out a way to basically pay guys, rather than maybe give them those $300 gift cards in the little store they set up to, you can get however many, these items are worth 2 points. This is worth 2 points. This is worth 1. And you add up to 5, you can get, whatever you want that adds up to 5 points. Like those little kind of gift shop things they do at bowl games. Maybe instead that's, a player just getting a flat, like $2,000 or something. I don't know. That's for people that have to worry about that to worry about. I'm glad to not be in that position as far as that goes. But with the Pac-12 note, okay, and I'm sure that's chum in the water for, the Big 12 folks that do want to go and argue with the Pac-12 folks and vice versa. And I'm entertained by some of that sometimes, but I'm not going to dunk on them over the playoff thing. I mean, until last week, like the Big 12 really had room to talk. I mean, outside of Oklahoma, nobody had made it. And nobody had won a game, period. Now TCU's changed both those things. So, yeah, the Big 12 deserves to puff its chest out a little bit. They're going to be playing for a national title. They haven't played for a national title since Texas in 2009, right? So it's been a while. And, really, I mean, if they don't win it, then, okay, great. You did something, but you didn't quite get to that mountaintop. It's all about winning it ultimately. But it's a big step forward for the Big 12. There's no doubt. It doesn't necessarily come, though, as a slash to the Pac-12 in any way. I think if the Pac-12 had, seen USC go to the playoff rather than TCU or something, I'm sure there would have been some gloating on the other side of it. But I think most people would realize, like, okay, it's just, it's luck of the draw sometimes, and different year, different teams, emerge, and it just so happened the Big 12 was able to benefit from it, and USC falls in the championship game and the conference championship game, and otherwise maybe we'd be talking about, being on similar footing. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's alarming that the team that, though you had the closest, I mean, Utah, Oregon, you're still going to have those teams, but yeah, USC's this rising brand, and they're going to be gone here pretty soon. So you're not going to have them to even, be in the mix. And, for the Big 12, they won't have Oklahoma to be in the mix any longer. And Texas never made it, but you still always are considering them. So it's something that both conferences will have to adjust to. And I will say, as of right now, the Big 12 does have a little bit of a lead in whatever race you want to say is being run, because they do have a new face of the franchise, so to speak, that's, going to play for a national title, not just making the playoff, but winning a game and going to play for a title. And it's not a team that's leaving in the next couple of years like it would be if it was the usual suspect in Norman, or like it would be if USC had made it on the Pac-12 side of things. Still very interested to see what all plays into that eventual TV contract that they announced. I mean, it's quite possible the Pac-12 announces a deal that's slightly better than the Big 12's. I mean, per school. That's entirely possible. Now, will it be as sexy, being mostly on Apple TV as it's been speculated? Is that how it actually works out in the end? I don't know. I think they're going to be on pretty similar footing. So, yeah, I mean, the Big 12's got a little bit more bragging rights, but I still feel like they're, pretty much in the same place. But TCU making the playoff and winning a game is definitely a big feather in the cap for Brett Yormark.
Paxton, who is on the chat room with us, a UT fan, was at the Cotton Bowl yesterday and said he was there just to watch two good teams and enjoy the game. And what a game you were able to enjoy. Chris Cochran is a head football coach at Lindale. I was looking for some information for him on a high school football note. Called him. He texted me back. He goes, Can I call you back later tonight? I'm at the Cotton Bowl. And, of course, that was about the time when Tulane started to make their comeback, and what a game it was.
I mean, was that even embarrassing to the Pac-12, though, or was that just embarrassing to USC?
I think it was USC's defense.
Because if they won, was that really a feather in the cap of the Pac-12, or that would have been a feather in the cap of the Big Ten, right? I mean, because that's how it feels with Oklahoma and Texas, at least right now. It feels like whatever they do is going to be thrown and marketed as more of an SEC thing than a Big 12 thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so I feel like USC, if you were the Pac-12, is that the team that you wanted to see? Maybe, no, you wanted Oregon or you wanted Utah, I would think, to be,
if you're
or
the
Washington.
Conference, yes.
Yeah, if you're the conference, that's what I'm saying. So, that's why I think it was a big deal for the Big 12, was it was a team that's actually going to be, is, and will remain for the foreseeable future a Big 12 squad.
Well,
because if USC goes and wins a national title,
the way out the door.
You don't want to see that if you're the Pac-12. So you'd get a little bit of a boost from it, in the immediate, but not really what it could be if the TCU, were to go win a title and what that would mean for the Big 12. So,
I mean, look, that's that would be terrible. That would be,
it's the nightmare scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Them winning the national championship next year and you getting to enjoy it for never. I mean, you don't get anything off of it because the Big Ten can say, look what we just added. We added the national champion.
That started. I know Arkansas left for the SEC a long, long time ago, but when A&M announced that they were leaving for the SEC, and Missouri, of course, was along with them, is when Johnny Manziel had the big run and A&M had that great rant. They were 11-2, whatever their record was, I can't remember. But that's when you started to hear the chants of the conference they were about to join. And then, of course, we heard them at Big 12 games as well.
Johnny was in the SEC.
Yeah, he was already in there.
The year before, the year before that.
But I do think that it can't be, and I'll call Dennis here in a second, I don't think it can be overstated the importance of the Big 12 champion the last 2 years being Baylor and TCU playing for a national title, and it not being the outgoing teams because of that nightmare scenario of one of them winning it on their way out the door, because then you don't even get to reap. I mean, you maybe get some financial benefit off of it that year, but you don't get any kind of marketing off of it because it's not like free agency where you could, be the World Series MVP and everybody enjoys that, and then February comes around and free agency and you're like, oh, hey, I'm going to go, play for Baltimore now.
No.
And it's over. It's known that you're leaving for years. So it's been huge for the Big 12 to have those two teams not leaving, not win the conference, not be involved in any of this the last 2 years. And sports is hard. So, there's a lot of luck involved in that. And the way that has bent the way that they really needed to go is kind of amazing when you think about all the things that could have gone in their favor, particularly just going back a year ago with Oklahoma. They're a pretty damn good team that, just wasn't as damn good as it had been in the last couple years. And they could have won it on essentially the year that they said, deuces.
Yep. We're walking out the door. Peace. It would have been another year after that, and now another year with 2023. But it looks like after that, it appears as if that's the year that after that year that Texas and Oklahoma. But last year, Oklahoma State, Baylor repped it, and then this year, of course, TCU, Kansas State. And what TCU is still doing. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, who's been on a conference call, the Transformational Committee with news, and Dr. Livingstone, Baylor president, on that committee. Dennis, thanks for your time. We appreciate you being a part of it, juggling what you have on your mind. Anything in particular from that conference call that you would mind sharing with us?
Well, the biggest thing is after more than a year in careful contemplation that all everybody wants to know about is recommendation to grow postseason by 25% in all sports. I think there'll be some significant pushback from the board on that regarding men's basketball, because there's a thought, and 25% more of 68 would be 87 teams in the bracket, because I think the average is way low in basketball and football as it pertains to other sports in the NCAA. But be that as it may, there is concern that if you go from 68 to say 87, the best teams still won't get in. It'll still be the 15 from, the ACC or the 16 from the Big 12. And that won't help those schools to get automatic qualifiers to St. Peter's, because some of that will be removed in this proposal, I believe. So that's the big takeaway from it. There's enhanced student athlete benefits, insurance, health, stuff like that. They didn't go as far as people thought, but I think the basketball piece is interesting.
Yeah, Dennis, basketball is kind of interesting to me in that there's been a disconnect between the fans of college athletics and the administrators of college athletics, probably as long as there have been college athletics, but no bigger one than we've talked about at length with the football playoff. Well, they finally kind of met the fans where they wanted to be with the 12-team playoff and the expansion there. Yeah. It feels to me like they're trying to carry that over. Look, you don't need to supersize everything. Some things are great just the way they are.
Well, let's be clear. The NCAA has absolutely nothing to do with the football, the football playoff and the expansion. So, there may have been some ancillary impact on that, but that thing was, that was decided by those commissioners, by the television consultants, and the feedback they got from that. So, but again, are there enough of the 131 teams, do enough of them have access to the system? And I think by expanding, you at least, lessen the prospect of a lawsuit. There's enough of those going on about monopolies, unfair practices. So I think the more the merrier. In fact, I'm kind of working on a piece this week. Is like, how long before we get 16? If this thing really takes off.
Dennis, looking at the on the field, obviously we got a national championship game set up now. What were your thoughts on TCU's win over Michigan, and how big of a smile do you think Brett Yormark had the other night?
I can tell you I was there in person. It's pretty big. No, it was great. I thought, I was as surprised as Michigan was about how athletic TCU was, particularly in their defensive front. They've got some dudes there. D. Winter, I think the defensive player of the game. Dylan Horton was really good. There was constant pressure on J.J. McCarthy. They shut down the run game, at least in the second half. You know what? At least after that initial 54-yard run by Donovan Edwards, Michigan only averaged 3.3 yards per rush the rest of the game. So, has Georgia been warned? I don't know. I do know that TCU thinks they've got better than a puncher's chance to win the national championship because they're there. This has never happened before. Mm-hmm. I mean, at this level, playing for a championship hasn't happened since BYU in '84. And even then, I can argue that you guys probably know this. BYU in '84 was a major college team in a major conference in the WAC. It was considered a major conference in Division 1A. So TCU getting there is bigger than BYU, bigger than Boise because they never got there. It's bigger than Cincinnati because Cincinnati didn't play the schedule that TCU did this year as compared to Cincinnati last year. Better program. Now, yeah, it's a Power 5 program, but still little old TCU playing for a national championship. So I wrote yesterday that TCU is the first true Cinderella in college football.
You think about that because college basketball seems to have them quite a bit, of course, from the opening weekend and sometimes all the way to the Final Four. You make a good point. We were discussing this for the Big 12. How critical. Last year, Baylor, Oklahoma State played for the title. Baylor wins the Sugar Bowl 12-2, number 5 in the country. And now TCU trumps that these are teams in the Big 12 that will be a part of the Big 12 future and not a couple of teams or one or two of the teams that are walking out the door.
Yeah, it had a direct impact on Brett Yormark being able to do that deal early and get in line ahead of the Pac-12 for more money than they were making with Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, they said it out loud that I forgot who, and I wrote the story that they said out loud, the rights holders, that the reason the Big 12 is so valued is because of Baylor, Oklahoma State last year. You know, those are the two teams playing for the championship. Whatever you had this year, 4 or 5 ranked teams. Obviously, TCU emerged from that. And it looks like this is going to be a really good competitive conference in college football. Now, whether we even use the term Power 5 anymore because the SEC and Big 10 is up for debate. But I think that's the reason the Big 12 is in great shape going forward with expansion, is because the existing teams have proven more than competitive. You know, if your worst team was Kansas last year, Kansas went to a bowl and started 5-0.
Dennis, do you think that the talent gap is closing between schools like Georgia and TCU? Now, it's not going to be exponential, but the transfer portal is a great equalizer for most everybody else. I get that you can be Georgia, and the transfer portal can come and go. And in some years, like this year, it didn't really matter for them. They didn't get what they wanted out of the portal, so they took no players. But it does seem like that maybe the gap is closing slightly.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think with the portal and NIL, Akron's still not going to have a very good program, and Alabama's going to have the best, and Georgia's going to have the best. And the thing that keeps them all in line, the thing that limits it, is you can only sign 25. So it's not like you can get 200 guys. So how does that change from what was the old system? Well, it really doesn't. Now you're just bidding in a different way. The bidding was underground before, and I'm kind of doing that piece for tomorrow. With what Jeff Traylor tweeted last week, I think it was. But now it's above ground and it's legal. So, it's an open bidding market. It's never been more transactional than it is right now with NIL and the portal. So I don't know if the gap is closed. I think this, in the TCU Georgia game, I think the story is going in is more strategic. And less about talent and whether TCU can hang with Georgia, because they proved they absolutely can. So as in any big championship game, we should be talking about, hey, what's Leslie going to do with the 3-3-5? What's Kirby going to do with his position group, which is defensive back against Mac, instead of saying, oh, TCU can't possibly compete. No, they can't.
You mentioned Jeff Traylor's comments. Look forward to reading your piece. But how do comments like that go over nowadays, given the NIL market and kind of the way that it just is now? Is that something that you think was applauded behind the scenes by coaches, or is that something where, like, hey, if you're not going to name names, then what's the point of saying anything? Like, how does that come across?
Yeah, I don't know how it was received by coaches, but I'm kind of getting tired of these coaches doing that. God love Jeff Traylor. He's the salt of the earth. You have Pat Narduzzi now popping off about what Drake May got. Well, Drake May doesn't play at Pittsburgh. So if you're going to do that, name names. Name names at USC when they took Jordan Addison. What was the number? Did they hijack him? Because in that profession, like, I hate to say this, organized crime, there's like this code of silence. We'll handle it on this. We're not going to rat out our fellow coaches. Well, then you got to live with the circumstances.
Yep.
And these are the circumstances right now.
What do you think would happen, Dennis, to a coach that actually published any kind of text messages?
Well, it's getting real close to that because a lot of these coaches are so frustrated. What would happen to them? I don't know. Maybe he would, then there'd be scrutiny from other programs on his program, and he would be outed. But you know what? We saw it with Nick and Jimbo. The difference being, these are probably the most powerful people on campus at their university and in their state. There are no repercussions. It was said, they were out there. It was like this melodrama, and then they kind of just made up, and that was it. You can't hurt each other. Two aircraft carriers going after each other aren't going to sink. That's usually for destruction. So, but if it was boy, think of a program revealing, text from an SEC power, maybe somebody in the American, somebody poaching their players from the SEC. Now that would cause a stir, but I just told you why that's probably not going to happen.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports columnist, covers college football, was at, of course, the TCU game and their win against Michigan. And, man, the dynamic type of players they have, even though the offense didn't put up crazy numbers, they found a way to counter-punch anything that Michigan brought to the table as well.
Dennis, what do you think about the long term for TCU and the way that they've Baylor? From our, we saw it here last year. They had the best season in school history, and they weren't really able to capitalize off it the next year. TCU already recruiting everything else has capitalized off their best season in school history. What makes Sonny Dykes different than Dave Aranda in that regard, you think?
Yeah, and I think we'll see. I think the Dave Aranda Baylor question is still open-ended. I mean, you can't pronounce sentence on this after one down year after playing for a championship. What he did there and what Matt Rule did there is unbelievable, fantastic. So I still think Baylor's player. Yeah, I think for TCU, Sonny is just killing it. He changed the entire culture. It's a very open conference, not only to the media, but it's more friendly. Players have more freedom. They're allowed to speak their mind, speak to the press. It's not restrictive. They're, facilities-wise and infrastructure-wise, they're spending a lot of money and making a lot of improvements. So I think TCU stays like this as long as Sonny is there. And I think it really puts the onus on, these four coming in. Okay, now we're getting a clearer picture of what you're coming into. It's not Texas and Oklahoma, but Texas wasn't pulling its weight anyway. And so can there be a new power team or teams at the top that are in competition every year? TCU suggests yes.
Dennis, I've seen this pop up quite a bit lately, but especially with, various jobs coming up and the fact that I know Baylor at one point at least, kicked the tires on looking at Sonny Dykes when they've had a couple of coach openings. Texas Tech, obviously, with the ties there before hiring Joey McGuire. Do you think his time at Cal kind of overshadowed how good of a coach he is just because of the circumstances he was in, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think he was a couple of bad jobs, mediocre to bad jobs. Cal doesn't put the resources into college football. They haven't to this day for a few years. Don't forget Jeff Tedford had Aaron Rodgers there, and they beat USC that one year. So something's changed there, and it hasn't changed back. And he took that job, and by the end of it, I think he was really frustrated. He in the middle of all that, he produced a Super Bowl quarterback, Jared Goff. So that that should be credited. Louisiana Tech is, again, not a Power Five. He did some good things there. They are dedicated to football in many ways, but it's still a group of five schools. So when the chance came just to go across town from SMU to TCU, we know that drive is bigger than just on the interstate. That's a huge difference. TCU, like SMU, is private, but they are in a Power Five and in the Big 12. They're the only school in the country that can say they beat every conference opponent and didn't lose this year. And I think that resonates with the committee, despite the fact they lost to Kansas State. They'd already beaten Kansas State. So it's just, it's a better job. And I think when Texas Tech came open, there was an opportunity there for TCU to do something. And I think they wanted to get in line, whatever that meant, with Gary Patterson to have a shot at Sonny. And it worked.
Sure did. It's been amazing. And we've been able to have Sonny on. And you're right. You talk about night and day with the feeling around the program with Sonny Dykes in charge. It is no question a lot different. Dennis, thanks for the update on the transformational committee as well. Be interested in your article on the tampering part of it. And also, thanks for your time and Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too, guys. Thanks.
Dennis Todd, CBS Sports, with us on many things college football.
Yeah, I didn't mean, by the way, I didn't mean that question to knock Dave Aranda, but it is kind of strange that
you don't have to say that.
No, I mean I just want to clarify. But I mean look, Baylor did not capitalize this year. TCU.
What was the question I asked him in the post game? Remember, Craig?
Yeah.
And, a year ago, you're preparing for the Sugar Bowl and your best team ever, best year ever, and he kind of responded to it. Not sure exactly if it was everything I wanted to hear, but he admitted that.
No, I mean, he responded to it, and I guess I don't recall what the answer even was. I was kind of – I'll be honest, I wasn't paying super close attention to what anybody had to say after that showing. I mean, what was he going to say to convince me, they're still on the right track after they just lost in, coldest bowl game ever on their rivals' field that's preparing for a college football playoff, what would turn out to be win, against Air Force. I mean, I was kind of in and out of what he had to say at that point, but I'm not, I haven't by any means thrown in the towel on Dave Aranda. I do think that, something we came across in the podcast earlier today was talking about how, last couple of years really, when Matt Rule was around and then even the start of the Aranda, period, is they were, and you see it now in Lubbock. You see it now with Joe McGuire. They talk about the brand and the toughest, most hardest working. Well, Tech fans probably know this by now, but that's exactly literally word for word what they were saying when Matt Rule was in Waco. That's word for word what they were doing. And so very familiar with all that and very familiar of, the physicality that entails and always being the toughest, hardest working, most competitive team, right? And so, I think that in some ways, physically, they were starting to get matched. Texas Tech was suddenly a much tougher physical team. I think you look at TCU with Kaz Kazadi. They were always tough under Patterson, but there's just a different toughness that they have now. And so Baylor wasn't one of those all of a sudden this year where they could just go in there and just slug away and ultimately land a couple more punches. Like they had other teams suddenly were hitting hard, hitting them with some pretty good return punches. And so when you suddenly can't muscle people, then where's your edge? Well, and I think your edge then comes in mentally, and we kind of stumbled across this, is I don't think this team, this is how it happened. There was a question about, the strength and conditioning, because that's always a question when you have a losing season, right? It's always what's one of the first things that gets brought up is do we need to look at strength and conditioning? So that's how we got on this. And so I was thinking about the physical part of it. I don't think they're in bad shape physically or they need to redo that. I just think some other programs have matched that now. But where I do think they are deficient is in the mental side of it. And that's where I think that TCU surpassed them if they hadn't already. And that's where I think Texas Tech's on a very good run right now in terms of that mentality that we know comes from the toughest, hardest working. They're never going to mentally be out of a game. They're never not going to fight till the very end of a game. And I think with this group of Baylor players where you saw Tech thrive and probably win a couple extra games because of that, this group being a weird mixture of old and young didn't have the up top the way that it needed to be. So I think that's as much of what you have to address this offseason as anything strength and conditioning related or speed related or coaching related. I think they got to get these guys wires suited up properly because the mentality was just not there.
When Kaz Kazadi was at Baylor,
you saw it against Michigan. That was the mentality.
When
right
he was
there.
at Baylor, the thing you heard most about him was not how much he would push people all the way physically, because strength and conditioning. How can you get inside the head of those who you're training? It was also where they were mentally, and Vic Valori is a hell of a strength and conditioning coach. He's the same guy that they went 12-2 with. So now, and he's no different than anyone. He's got to try to find another way also, or maybe tweak something here and there on how do I get to these guys a little bit differently.
Would you like to know the only indicator you can tell where the strength and conditioning coach needs to go? If your team leads every single week.
In the fourth quarter?
Or
second half?
Yeah, they have big leads and they lose. That's the indicator, or it's been a long stretch of losing seasons where you're clearly not as athletic, but one season where you've, had some back and forth game. I mean, Baylor was in every game except for two of them. They
never were in that Kansas State game.
Kansas State and Air Force. They were in every game but two, and so it wasn't conditioning. It was, like you said, mental.
When cold weather. What is that? I mean, that's not so much like I can't run fast anymore. It's like, no, you are not thinking about the play going on. You're thinking about how cold your hands are.
As a matter of fact, running faster is the best thing for you right now.
Yeah. And winning's the best thing for you. It's not as cold.
But, yeah, you can see it when a team, loses the lead. Okay, this team is gassed in the fourth quarter. They are, they're not doing things right. Something's upside down here. They need to change up what they're doing. And part of that can be not necessarily on the strength coach. He could be doing it's not like he's like, all right, guys, congratulations on finishing mat drills. Now we're going to have a large ice cream social. That's not what he's doing. It's just that maybe his message is lost in the extra things that you're doing, making sure that when you walk away and do those, they're not doing because the message is gone from the coaching staff, and the strength coach is the one you see the most.
When you have a team like they had in 2021 that was not only 12-2, they were damn good. They were tough. And offensively, they were just good enough because that defense was incredible. Special teams were good. They won the close games. And I forgot who it was. I cannot remember who it was, but there was a writer that mentioned, it might have been Bill Connolly at ESPN mentioned his biggest concern. It might have been Phil Steele as well. The biggest concern with teams, you don't go back-to-back very often with a 4-1 record in like one-score games. Something's going to flip there, not just because people leave or you're a younger team or whatever. It just is something that you're riding a fine line, and this year they lost those close games.
Yeah, last year they won them. This year they lost them. TCU won a bunch of close games this year. They won a bunch of close games, and that's why they're sitting where they are. And they lost one too. And fortunately for them, it didn't end up mattering, but it did cost them, another trophy in the trophy case, and it cost them, a conference title. But they obviously wouldn't trade that for where they are right now, so it's okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a coin flip when you get down to the nitty gritty, and I do think though that to that point, the mentality that you have in those situations is highly important. And again, I think that's where last year you had Jalen Petrie and you had Terrell Bernard and you had guys like that like, okay, it's fourth quarter. We got to make a goal line stand to win the game. We're confident we can do that. You go out there this year and it's like, I mean, I don't know that guys even knew how to function in some cases because there were so many young guys out there in certain situations. So they'll be better by just getting older. But I do think that for Baylor in particular, or what separates those close games and what's really separated TCU, what's aided Texas Tech in kind of their resurgence and the reason it feels the way that it feels is, yeah, there's physicality, there's some dynamic playmaking, but it's the up top that I think's, in really good shape in those places. And I think that if there was any deficiency for Baylor this year that is glaring and that needs to be fixed somehow or another or progress next year, it is that mentality, because having the right one can tip the scales in your favor in some of those close contests and make the difference between last year's results and this year's results. And obviously very different feelings coming out of the season. All
right, we got Off the Radar coming around the corner. I've been wanting to show this picture since I got it over the weekend after the win, TCU. That's on the left top part, Brad Boozer and his wife, his son, and he, of course, one of the sponsors of this show. His son, Jake, who we covered his last year when he was at Riker High School in Waco, was a walk-on at TCU. I think it was Patterson was there at the time. And he's a part of a team that's going to play for the national championship. He played quarterback at Riker. There's some times you saw some videos of working out in the summer. His dad's been a triathlete, among many other things as well. So there's the Boozer family following the win near the podium at the game against Michigan at the Fiesta Bowl.
The sponsor of this actual hour of the show.
There we go. Perfect timing. When we come back, Craig, and Off the Radar, plus much more, we are 365 Sports, and this, of course, with Garrett Ross, Jacob Wilson, Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter, Levi Caraway, every day, 3 o'clock, right here on 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Right now, as they've opened up a new year, Bob Mock saw him a couple weeks ago, and I think I was just at a regular store, like a grocery store. He was talking, I said, anybody else, you're going to add another store? He's got 5 locations around the Waco area, Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, Hewitt, and also in Robinson. He goes, no, I just need to make sure now I take the 5 I have and make them better. They have a 30% off all menu price pizzas if you use the app. If you don't have the app, get the app, and you can order online. Great 30. This is new. Order now, 30% off all menu price pizzas, app and online only. They do have the pepperoni magnifico, of course, $9.99 if you order online. Call them up, go pick it up, or they'll deliver it to you. Large one-topping pizzas, unlimited medium one-topping pizzas. But right now, the special with Marco's Pizza, wherever you have a Marco's Pizza where you live, 30% off all menu price pizzas if you use the app, and also order now with the code word GREAT30. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
What are you waiting for? Next year's New Year's resolution to lose weight, get fit, start working out? 3, 2, 1, go to Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness. If you really want to get in shape, get rid of weight or inches, you have to make a commitment to work out, and the excuses of not enough time, you're too tired or too busy. There's a special place that will change your life at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco. And they have a commitment to you too. With personal trainers Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Bosch. State-of-the-art Cybex equipment, new weights and spin bikes, clean and spacious locker rooms, each with a whirlpool and sauna, and a staff that will know your name when you walk through the front door. Elite tennis facilities and a great tennis pro in Britt Coleman. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness is a place you can call home, a place you can work out on your own or with 40-plus group exercise classes. It's time for you to get in shape, lose inches, get fit at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lake Shore Drive in Waco.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Howdy, Chet Garner here, professional guide, searching for bears in the wild. But not just any bears, oh no, a particular kind. With hundreds of thousands roaming freely in the wild, yet still hard to spot unless you know the signs. There they are, Baylor bears. If you're a bear enthusiast or even a bear yourself, join me and let's find some bears in the wild.
Join the expedition at baylor.edu/alumni.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Want more updates during the day? Follow 365 Sports YT on Twitter.
Appreciate all of you in the chat room as always. Many of you going back and forth on it. We appreciate that. Just the names right now: Bobby B, Devil Frog, Paxton, Lone Star, SCFB, and Hummus Hero is also a part of that too. All right, Christian Robinson was also hired late last week by Baylor. Played at Georgia, coached at Auburn, and College Football Matrix, our good friend Dave Bartu, sent this to me. Matrix top 40% grade of all the FBS linebacker coaches since 2009. And guess what? The name of Christian Robinson is on that list. I don't have the list all poured out, but Dave Bartu sent that to us. And we appreciate that, the hiring of Christian Robinson.
Yeah, and Dave Bartu's not just going to put out the list because what he does is charge people for that.
And I said, I said, hey, you're not going to be able to send me that list. He goes, no, because we want people to have. And so, but his point was that Christian Robinson, highly rated as one of the linebacker coaches around the country.
I mean, we'll see, based off just social media, and that is what it is, as I typically say, it's what you make of it. But, I definitely saw some people who thought it was a really great hire. I saw some Florida fans who So our linebackers were never worse. I saw, Auburn fans who were like, welcome Ron Roberts, and, we need a better so it depends on your vantage point. But if Dave Aranda thinks that he's a good fit, then I have no reason to do anything but believe that's the right move. So, yeah, I mean, I'm totally open-minded to it, and it was a bit of a mixed bag as far as the reaction goes, but that can be the case with a lot of different hires. So, good news is we'll actually get to see here in the next few months, and hopefully he's a guy that sticks and hits well. But, definitely welcome to Waco, and, we'll see what you got.
We'll hear more from Brandon Marcello, 247 College Football, just a little bit after 5 o'clock on Georgia. And also TCU, he wrote a piece about TCU knew they had Michigan kind of where they wanted them based on an early decision Michigan made near the goal line. He'll join us at 5:10. John McClain, and obviously Hall of Fame writer, covers the NFL and more. His thoughts about Hamlin and the story last night in Cincinnati. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, they have a brand new location. And my goodness, it has all the bells and whistles and all the amenities you could imagine, and bigger, better, faster, stronger, and they were already amazingly good. Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe, metal buildings, product you need to build things, commercial or real estate. Incredible customer service. You can't do that, and you can't stay in business since 1943 without two things. One, you can have all the great handshakes and customer service you want, and they do, but also keeping up with what customers want, need, and what they've liked before, and coming back for more because the product is really, really good too. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with a brand new location on the Southeast Loop in Waco, just on the eastern side of I-35, pioneerboys.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automatichefcanteen.com.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. It's time for Craig Smoak's Off the Radar. Brought to you by Pickup Outfitters. Since 1997, we've been outfitting trucks, SUVs, and vans at 220 Lake Air Drive or createacommotion.com.
Welcome back into 365 Sports. Time for Off the Radar. Just a grab bag of stories that we stop down and take a look at on Tuesdays and Thursdays around 4:45 or so. And this is very much on the radar. The situation last night with Damar Hamlin and Monday Night Football, but the NFL has at least tried to make little statements here and there. So I want to start off by just mentioning what they had to say today in terms of that game, when it might be played again, because, look, mentioning is not making it a priority by any means, but there are things at stake, obviously, with the rest of the season, and that was not important in any way last night. But you do start to look down the road and you wonder, okay, they're going to have to play football again, and when they do, like, what's the situation? When does this game get played, and what impact does it have? Well, the NFL did release a statement today saying that they continue to be, in constant contact with the medical team that is caring for Damar Hamlin, as well as the Bills and Bengals organizations and the NFLPA, and that after speaking with both teams, NFLPA leadership, Commissioner Roger Goodell informed the clubs that Bills-Bengals will not be resumed this week, and the NFL has made no decision regarding a possible resumption at a later date. They have not made any changes to the Week 18 regular season schedule, and obviously this will be something they'll just play by ear and maybe decide, or we'll have to decide something at a later time. But for now, there are no moves in the works, and certainly no thought of a resumption in the immediate future.
Just fundamentally on it, if Kansas City wins, then last night's result, had the game been played completely, would not have mattered.
Seeds 2 and 3?
I mean, seeds 2 and 3 matter, but as far as the one thing they were trying to get as the bye, that one becomes null and void and moot a little bit there. But for the 2 and 3 thing, I mean, they may have to just do a coin flip or something, because I don't know how
I don't think so. I don't even think you do that. I think you just, it's a game that's not played.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, and again, we're not looking past the situation with Damar Hamlin. We're not at all. That's why we did the segment we did earlier with Dr. Goswami. But I don't. Where are you going to play it? When are you going to play the game? In the first week where you're supposed to be playing anyway? You can't do that. You can't play it between the conference championships and Super Bowl, because by then you would be in or out. So. And honestly, I don't care if they play the game or not, but that's a good point.
Where are
they going to play the game?
Of interest in, over the overall league standings and seedings for the postseason. And I'm not sure when that game will be played, and it's obviously not a priority right at this very moment. And there's been a lot of discussion about just the NFL's response. You got to be careful with what's thrown out there, man, because there's a lot of bad information that's out there sometimes, and there's still a lot of people believe in a lot of falsehoods. It's very alarming, like how much of a rate that's occurring, and not being any the wiser. It's frightening. But the NFLPA working together, and they'll figure that situation out. But the NFL did release a memo today to teams talking about the mental health resources that are available, and that's kind of something now that you hear mentioned a lot with a lot of different things. But watching those players' faces last night, I mean, if there was ever a time for mental health to be needed, I mean, it was certainly last night, because that wasn't just, oh, your buddy's knees hurt. That was them watching their buddy get CPR as he's non-responsive. So they are, extending mental health services, and hopefully, I hope for everybody involved. Obviously, Damar Hamlin first and foremost. Hope he's okay ultimately, and his family and loved ones, and then his teammates on down the line. But that was something that struck a chord with everybody that was watching last night. So his family has come out with a press release as well, expressing their sincerest gratitude for the love and support shown, the generosity and compassion they said means the world to us. Please keep Damar in your prayers. We'll release updates as soon as we have them. That was from the Hamlin family. So a lot of different statements going on today, and not much change, though, as far as what we know and what occurred to cause it and all of that. But no idea when they might play that game again. And I think for the most part, most people don't really care. They'll figure it out in the long run regardless. Elsewhere, Michigan's Jim Harbaugh. Sure are a lot of rumors cropping up around him. And speaking of the NFL head coaching carousel, this is now a yearly occurrence, really, the offseason and Jim Harbaugh and whether or not he's going to, be lured back to the professional landscape. Obviously, last year there was a lot of buzz about him possibly going back to the league. And, you got done losing to TCU. And here recently he talked about, the future in Ann Arbor, and certainly appeared, judging it generally, that, it was a statement, if you wanted to take it that way, that he would be back, and there's not going to be any of this kind of, is he in, is he out? Well, if you were one of those people that, took it as, oh, he made a statement, he's going to be here, everything, they're going to keep building this thing. Well, apparently, the Panthers are quite interested, as they could be looking at going back to the college head coaching, although different situation than Matt Rule, obviously, because Harbaugh's already got some skins on the wall in the NFL. But reports out of Charlotte are that the Panthers are interested. There's been some talking there, and apparently the Broncos, another team that could be kicking the tires as well on Jim Harbaugh. So what are your thoughts on Harbaugh, Michigan, the NFL game, and the dance that we're doing once again?
I think eventually he's going to go back. I mean, he was just this close to winning a Super Bowl and didn't. So I think that probably still burns a little bit for him. I know that he maybe wants to win a college national title, but that game is changing a lot. Maybe Harbaugh doesn't want, would rather, look, if I'm going to have free agency and all this other stuff, I'd rather just deal with it on the up
salary
and
cap.
I'd rather just deal with it on the up and up. Here's the other thing to keep in mind about Tepper and then now the Broncos. The Broncos are essentially owned by Walmart now. That's the Waltons own the Broncos. And so that is a family that, I don't know if you know this, has a lot of money. They have a lot of money. So they are going to be very competitive in what they do. And if they want Jim Harbaugh, it's going to be Jim Harbaugh. Same with David Tepper. I tend to think, though, that he might lean towards letting Steve Wilkes have another go at it because he's done such a good job down the stretch here. And he did not, have, a good chance in Arizona. So he has not a fair shake in his career as a head coach. So this would be an opportunity to give him one. So I think Denver and Harbaugh makes a lot of sense because they need someone with an offensive mind who can shake the cobwebs off of Russell Wilson, because they're not getting out of that deal either. I mean, Russell Wilson's their quarterback for 2 or 3 years now. So they're going to have to deal with that because they can't just eat that money. So I think Harbaugh would be a good choice for them if they made it.
Yeah, apparently Tepper contacted him personally, and they've had a discussion, although the reports don't indicate, how far those discussions went, or how in-depth or anything like that. But, it's something to keep an eye on, and again, it felt like he had recently made a comment that you could take as, I'm going to be around at Michigan, but there's also the way that he phrased it that you could say, like, he didn't really promise anything. And so it's just, eye of the beholder. But as of right now, there's at least a couple of teams that are looking at Jim Harbaugh after that loss to TCU. And that's going to be something that I think it's, as long as he's head coach in Michigan, this is going to be an every year thing. I don't know how you stem it from not happening, because there seems to be no undying interest on his part either. This was coming out of the UFC ranks, not a very good story for President Dana White. He had to issue a public apology yesterday after a physical altercation between he and his wife that caught him slapping his wife a couple of different times on camera. That was captured on video during their New Year's Eve celebration down in Mexico. Showed he and his wife Ann in the VIP area of a nightclub. And as I just mentioned in the video, You can see him slap her a couple times after they have like a little bit of a conversation, and she's clearly upset about something, and then he reacts and smacks her in the face. As she had smacked him first, to be clear, and he responded by smacking her a couple of times. Dana White apologized to TMZ, saying that there are no excuses for what happened. You've heard me say over the years, there is never, ever an excuse for a guy to put his hands on a woman, and now here I am on TMZ talking about it. My wife and I have been married for almost 30 years. We've known each other since we were 12 years old. We've obviously been through some S together. We've got 3 kids. This is one of those situations that's horrible. I'm embarrassed, but it's also one of those situations that right now we're more concerned about our kids. And he went on saying, I'm literally making no excuses for this thing at all. It's never happened before. It's the first time it's ever happened. People are going to say what they're going to say, and it is what it is. Whatever people say is deserved. I deserve it. So he's not making any excuses, but it was a very ugly thing to be captured on camera. The wife, meanwhile, Ann White, said that they've been married for almost 30 years, and to say it's out of character is an understatement. Nothing like that's ever happened before. They were both drinking too much on New Year's Eve, and things got out of control on both sides. They've talked it through as a family and apologized to one another, and she hopes that people will respect their privacy for the sake of their kids. So both on the record. Don't know if y'all saw the video or not, but now you are seeing some of the articles pop up of why he should step down as president of UFC. So it doesn't feel like a story that's going to go away entirely, but something that was very much overshadowed probably by a lot of the football stuff going on, but definitely a big story, especially caught on camera like that. So we'll see what the future holds for Dana White and whether there are any more repercussions as a result of that.
I am not trying to say this to create any more like negativity, but she didn't file charges, but it was caught on tape.
Yeah.
And so when you hear either Dana White's wife or Dana White say this has never happened before, well, we've seen a recent situation with a coach at Texas where there were charges filed because it was a phone call, and then saying that, well, this hasn't happened before. So I don't know.
By the way, with that story in particular, PR machine. So the Friday night news drop right before Christmas weekend.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, beautiful stuff there. I mean, you would talk about just putting a story right where nobody's going to pay much attention to it. Brian Davis, I know now works over there in the PR department. He learned a thing or two covering the Baylor story and other ones. That was just PR move personified, was that pre-Christmas weekend news drop of the Chris Beard girlfriend statement.
I bet most people don't even know that it was dropped. Yeah, because of what
that's
you
what
said.
I'm saying.
Yep.
It was literally
because
like,
Baylor,
what's a spot you could put this story? And what was really mind-boggling about it is like, what she had to say was important. So that wouldn't be something that you would think you'd want to hide. So having that in mind, then why in the world would you put it in that spot other than to hide it?
Because the responses were, okay.
Right. No, they clearly did it intentionally. They dropped it 5 o'clock or whatever that was Friday night before Christmas weekend. But that was chef's kiss when it comes to PR handling. That was a Friday night news dump, no doubt about it. And yeah, I mean, it worked because I don't think we've heard basically anything since then, and we didn't really hear anything about it because another part of it was that most people weren't doing shows during that time period.
Well, we discussed it Friday, right, Garrett? It was right before, after the Baylor Air Force game, the day after, but not much.
Well, and that's for people who don't know what the Friday news dump is you wait until everybody has essentially got their show set, especially your local news.
And people are gone for the weekend.
And people are gone. It's a holiday weekend. People are gone. Friday nights, you're not necessarily in local news doing a skeleton crew, but that's usually the night that like, hey, if I can take this off, I'm going to do it. So people you don't have enough crew to maybe scramble on a story like that, especially since it's not a major story changing development. I mean, it's another detail to it, but it's something you can't
do it
squeeze
because you
in.
want it to go under the radar.
Yes. Exactly.
Period.
So there's all these different things.
We're trying to be almost too protective of Texas in a way, but yeah, it was absolutely premeditated that they did it when they did it. And if you wanted people to really hear her side of the story, you would have waited till after Christmas break or a Monday or when people are looking at the news. But when they did, it was very intentional, and it worked because I don't think really many people are even talking about that anymore. And so, Dana White and his wife going a different route and getting out there and probably had to do it that way given his high profile. But they're both on the record. And so we'll see what comes from that. But, there is at least some calls from a couple of media outlets that I saw of, him needing to step down now as a result of this. We'll see what fighters have to say because I'm sure they'll be asked about it. But that's the latest on that situation, and no movement on the UFC taking any action as of the last that I have seen on that. And then meanwhile, to close this and round it all up, some ratings from the college football playoff semifinals. Georgia, Ohio State, that rang in the new year, averaged 22.1 million viewers on the ESPN family of networks. The Peach Bowl, the most watched semifinal since Georgia, Oklahoma, and the Rose Bowl 5 years ago. That brought in 26.9 million, so a drop of 4 million from that game, but still very healthy numbers, having 22.1 million. Viewership peaked at around 23.9 in the 9:45 to 10 p.m. 15-minute window. So as they got closer to midnight, there were a lot of people watching the countdown or whatever, so it started to drop after that, but did peak at around 23.9. Fourth largest audience in the history of the semifinals, which is now a total of 18 games. And we won't have all of how many people were watching at bars and how many people were doing that. But regardless, that's a very healthy number. In the TCU-Michigan Fiesta Bowl game, 21.4 million watched that one. Highest for an early semifinal slot since Georgia-Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl in 2018. Peaked at 26.4 million in the final 15 minutes. And that is only behind the 2018 Rose Bowl and the 2015 Rose Bowl as the most watched early slot semifinal. So 21.4 mil for TCU Michigan, 22.1 for Georgia Ohio State, and up in the upper tier as far as the most watched bowl games, up 28% from last year, highest number since 2018. So college football, you got some momentum right now. Take advantage of it because a lot of eyeballs are on the product, and that's good news ratings-wise for the sport.
I think real quickly before we go to the next segment, you mentioned Ohio State and Georgia because I think you had the numbers flipped at the end. What was their average, Ohio State and Georgia?
Ohio State and Georgia's average was peaked at 23.9. Where did that go?
45 or 50 million people watched those two games. They both were amazing. The 2018 Rose Bowl was that 54-48 crazy when Georgia won the game in overtime.
Georgia, Ohio State averaged 22.1.
Okay.
And TCU, Michigan averaged 21.4.
And you're talking about Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, and you can have someone like TCU in the middle of that, and the numbers are still going to be just outrageously good. All right, thank you, Craig. Appreciate that. In fact, Georgia and Oklahoma were like double overtime, I believe it was, because Georgia blocked an Oklahoma field goal and then won it with Sonny Michel on a touchdown run. Thank you, Craig. Off the Radar every Tuesday and Thursday at around 4:45 when we come back. All right, TCU and Georgia play for the national championship. Brandon Marcello was at the TCU-Michigan game and wrote a story about that. And when TCU thought maybe, we might be in Michigan's head or not. This is 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco with a 48-foot walk-in humidor. Carol, Ashley, and Cheyenne run it. They have CBD products if you're interested, including Vita Dreams. This was a gummy that allows you, when you chew on it, maybe an hour or so, or you figure it out before you go to bed. Next thing you know, you're resting peacefully. You fall asleep, and you may have saved tossing and turning for 30 to 45 minutes or an hour. And, of course, inside their humidor, 48-foot walk-in humidor, great brands of cigars, Rocky Patel, Arturo Fuente, Romeo and Julieta, E.P. Carrillo, and many more, including the number one ranked cigar last year, the 1964 Padron. It's Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, cause weight gain, and wreak havoc on your sexual desire and performance. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results, so if you're tired of being tired, I challenge you to man up and Google search Low T Waco or go online pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $150 a month, includes lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, follow-up visits compared to $395 a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T as board-certified physician consultations will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone available. Contact Petty Clinic Low T today, just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway. Petty Clinic Low T, helping men become the high-performance men they deserve to be. PettyClinicLowT.com or Google search Low T Waco.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Brandon Marcello.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
$10. I owe $10.
First time of the new year, so.
Yeah. I have a deductible. Brandon Marcello's 247 college football columnist and writer joins us on 365 Sports. Brandon, thanks for your time. What was your reaction? And, of course, it's NFL, but with what happened last night, did you see what was going on with Hamlin and Buffalo and Cincinnati?
I saw the replay, of course, surfing through Twitter. It was just devastating to see that live and to see someone fall down like that. You could see a couple of players noticing immediately it was really bad, pointing to him and trying to get people on the field. And, it's just devastating and something that I think a lot of us lose sight that that's possible at any moment on any hit on the football field, because our bodies react differently. And these guys are going through trauma every single play. They're getting hit, and it just takes a hit one way or another that something really bad can happen. And we lose track of that. And it's just amazing the type of stress these players put on their bodies every single day just for the sake of entertainment. And to see that happen is one, a reminder, but also secondly, just just shows you just how devastating the sport can be to the body. And goodness, I obviously very much hope he is okay, and not only that, but comes back stronger. And if he wants to continue playing football, is able to do so. But man, just devastating to see that. And obviously, they made the right call in calling that game off, and they shouldn't even really discuss when to play or whatever until the players on those rosters all say, hey, we're okay with playing a game at some point later this season. I don't think it should be up to the league office. I think it should be up to those players.
Yeah, Brandon, to the college football playoff now. It was an exhilarating night of football. TCU, kind of shocked the world in that there were a lot of people and a lot of people who I think probably hadn't watched TCU all that much this year thought that this was just going to be a Michigan because of the recruiting rankings and the history and all that. But TCU kind of made Michigan play their game, which is, hang around and be able to kind of control it and do what they do and ward off things. What are your thoughts about what Sonny Dykes has done this year?
Yeah, it's insane. It's crazy. It's also, I think, maybe shows us what's possible here in this era of the transfer portal. Not to say TCU's roster is obviously heavily transfers, but he did add 14 new guys. 2 of them are their leading tacklers, including Johnny Hodges, who came in from Navy, their top tackler. And, a lot of questions out there about TCU's roster from a blue chip ratio standard. TCU's one of those first teams to be able to get into the national championship game here in this modern era, despite not having like top 10 recruiting classes. And that's something, but it's also because of the portal era. They've been able to add and complement their roster with players. And it shows you that you can have an immediate turnaround, yes, but also you can build something in the portal as long as you're also recruiting high school kids on a regular basis and doing so at a semi-respectable level. And, it's happening all across college football. Look at all the success first-year coaches had this year, from Lincoln Riley at USC, for example. It's remarkable. But what makes this so special, obviously, is getting to the national championship game. But the way they've done it, playing 11 straight weeks of games without a bye week, amazing. 9 of those games being Big 12 games, crazy. And you win them all. This team just has something about it. They've got that mojo. They've got everything. They got the wind at their back. And you're exactly right. They're at the Fiesta Bowl watching it in person. When TCU got up 21-6, Michigan hits that long field goal, and I'm going, okay, Michigan's going to come back in this game. But I never felt like TCU was actually threatened. I just thought, well, Michigan now, they might be able to come back, but TCU's already proven that they could do what they want against this Michigan defense. And at some point, they're going to tire down this Michigan defense a little bit further because of their own run game. And, TCU withstood the storm and, of course, countered every punch that Michigan threw at them in the second half. And to me, out of all those comebacks we saw this season, and I was at one myself, the Kansas and TCU game in Lawrence, all those comebacks, 7 comeback wins. This win in the Fiesta Bowl was the most impressive because I thought they dictated the way that game was played from start to finish. And I thought going in, it was going to be the opposite story because Michigan has dictated the tempo in every single game this season. This was the first time Michigan couldn't get into their own playbook and do what they wanted. A remarkable job by the coaching staff and the players at TCU this past weekend.
On the flip side, Brandon, everybody, ringing in the new year, and for those that had it timed just right, watching the end of the other side of the bracket go down, and obviously heartbreak for Ohio State, but the Dogs, are back in the championship game once again. What did you make of that contest? And now knowing what's ahead, Frogs and Dogs, what are your first thoughts when looking at that matchup?
Well, gamer's game. Max Duggan game for TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. Stetson Bennett game for Georgia. He struggled in that third quarter, but that fourth quarter, remarkable. One of his better performances of his career, and he's the reason why they won and were able to overcome that 2-touchdown deficit in the fourth quarter. Just absolutely remarkable. Ohio State, I thought, came in with a good plan, and for that matter, C.J. Stroud finally showing to me that he's really willing to go 115 miles per hour every single play if he needs to. And he's willing to tuck the ball and run when he has to. He had that long run to set up that field goal to potentially win the game. But he was not helped by his coaching. Ryan Day, I thought, was just absolutely terrible on those final two plays that they called. Why are you trying to settle for a long field goal in what amounts to pretty much a road game in Atlanta for a spot in the national championship game? I don't care how good your kicker is. You do not put it on the foot of a kicker in a road game. You just don't do it. CJ Stroud, your best player. He was probably the best player on the field regardless of position or team. And you took the ball out of his hands in a lot of ways by doing some really dumpy plays. And that's too bad. And, the word out there now is that Ryan Day is going to give up play calling duties next season. That's probably a good idea. But, people say, was Ryan Day on the hot seat? Well, he's not on the hot seat, but the tide is starting to turn on him with the fan base there. Like, can you get it done? Can you stand out of your own way? Can you get out of your own way? And the last two games for Ohio State, in the game against Michigan and against Georgia, the fourth quarter play calling and the fourth quarter performances, terrible. And that all goes back to Ryan Day and the way he was coaching those games. I think he deserves a lot of criticism, a lot of questions today. As for TCU and Georgia, sorry about that.
No.
I think Georgia, deservedly so, a favorite in this, but I think TCU is going to cover that 2-touchdown, spread right now. But, to me, Georgia is just by far the most dominant on both sides of the ball, a team that TCU has faced all year. And they're capable of doing what Michigan was not capable of doing, and that is playing any type of tempo or style of play, and being able to do it better than TCU because of the talent they've got on their roster. But listen, don't discount anything. If TCU wins the turnover battle by 2, I think they end up winning that game against Georgia this coming Monday.
Brandon, on Ryan Day, could you see him trying to recontrol the narrative and maybe letting his agent float his name out there for NFL jobs so that he can get out ahead of this thing before, say, he loses to Michigan again next year, which may not even be Jim Harbaugh, because he might be going to the NFL too, and get ahead of it so he's not on the hot seat, because right now he's just on the annoyed seat.
Well, I think it actually could backfire on him. It isn't like he's really like a coach right now who's in the best of graces with Ohio State faithful. If he starts flirting for the NFL jobs, that's not going to help his stature at all there. I think the only thing that could help him is if he comes out publicly here, which he will, and say, hey, we're reevaluating things in the program. I'm giving up play calling. Here's what we're going to do. Here's our plan of attack. And then also, how do we complement some of the players that we do have coming back on this roster? If he loses a third straight time to Michigan, that's when he'll be on the hot seat. And again, for him, they cannot afford next season some late game breakdowns with their coaching, because in the end, I think that's what really did them in against Michigan and most noticeably against Georgia.
Brandon, I know we got the All-American games that are starting to get underway. Looking back at TCU and the recruiting piece that we were talking about a little bit and the difference the transfer portal makes, how much do you see their stock rising in terms of the way recruits pay attention to them and mention them? Not that they've been bad in recruiting by any means, but being a top 30-ish type of team, they've obviously made some moves in the portal already with guys like JoJo Earl, but what kind of a benefit do you see Sonny Dykes and company getting based off of just this year?
It's big for them, and I think more so it'll help them in the transfer portal immediately, especially when we get in that second wave, that second window in the spring. I think that's really going to help them. Let's say if they all of a sudden need, a stellar receiver or something happens in the spring practices, I think they'll be able to go get the top guy potentially. And you're already seeing some of the effects just from what they were experiencing in the regular season on the recruiting trail. They're on pace to have the best recruiting class in school history there at TCU when all is settled here in February. And I think here in the immediate future, it's really going to help them in the portal when things kind of settle down. And also remember, I know coaches act like they still have a lot of time for the recruiting, but goodness gracious, with all these championship games, the playoff, TCU dealing with it. Listen, they're not able to focus on recruiting as much as they want to, and the portal for that matter. And when things settle down after next Monday, I'm really going to be, it's going to be fascinating to see how they go about attacking the transfer portal those final about 6 days or whatever. And then obviously when it opens back up in May.
Brandon, by the way, one of the tweets you had after the game on Saturday that I wanted to let everyone know about, you mentioned that Michigan on their opening drive ran the Philly special on 4th and goal. And that one of the quotes from Johnny Hodges, who was fantastic so far this year, once they started jumping in their bag, I knew we had them. If you're going to do trick plays in a championship game, you're just reaching for anything. That was a pretty powerful quote, in my opinion.
Yeah, Johnny was great after the game. He was really harping on that. He thought Michigan overthought things way too much. And I agree from the aspect that I think they were trying to over course correct their mistakes from last year against Georgia in the college football playoff semifinal. They came in there 2 days later than a team usually would into Phoenix. They treated it like a quote unquote business trip. Word is that the players weren't talking on the bus rides between the stadium and the hotel to practices. And they're taking it really too seriously. And Johnny Hodges told me after the game, he goes, listen, all you got to do is come out here a couple of days early, drink a lot of water, get used to the environment and the dry air, go have a steak dinner, enjoy yourself. And then when it comes time to practice and game plan, treat it like it's a business trip. And as he told me, you don't have to be a psychopath. So I thought he had some really wise words from that aspect, and it's hard to disagree. I mean, if you're a player on that defense for TCU and Michigan just ran down your throat to get down the goal line, and they end up running the Philly special, and they do so, by the way, haphazardly, where no one was really having any effort there, you're sitting there going, wow, they don't trust themselves to run it against us here. So they're just going out and doing the wildest things possible to see if they can maybe confuse us. Game on. We're going to kill them. And that's how TCU felt after that. I mean, that was the worst thing Michigan could have done because it gave them all the confidence in the world, and they did so on the very first drive. Terrible, terrible coaching decision.
You know, Brandon, I would say that Jim Harbaugh as a coach overall does not have many weaknesses at all. I mean, he's really, really good. But his one weakness is kind of what Sonny Dykes' strength is that Jim Harbaugh's biggest weakness is he holds on too hard to the stick, like you just said. I mean, he's really high-strung, intense, and very a peculiar, unique kind of guy, to put it mildly. And Sonny Dykes, even though you see him get intense with the referees on the sideline, is day-to-day. Like, outside of that, like, day-to-day, Sonny Dykes is like, man, it's a great day to be alive. Yep. Nothing's going to bother me today. And he just kind of rolls with it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And when he's got to get mad and animated, he does it. But he's human is the way I describe him. Mm-hmm. He treats everybody the same way. He takes his time to get to know players and get to know them and talk to them. And he understands you got to treat everybody a little bit differently based off of the way they react to things. And he's just got a good handle on stuff. And I think his only weakness is the pull for him to maybe like be a play caller again. He even mentioned that down in Phoenix about how he walks by the offensive meeting room and he sometimes hears them talking in there and he's like, man, maybe I should go up there and draw a couple plays up. And he has to like pull himself back. But that's the sign of a great coach. He's been everywhere. He's been all over the country and he's been successful for the most part other than, Cal. And he's learned a lot of lessons. And along that way, that's what made him such an elite coach. And for that matter, Jim Harbaugh too. Listen, when you have football in your family and your dads, like for Jim and for Sonny, are legends, it's hard to not be a great coach. It really is. You'd have to screw up to not be a great coach to be around men like that. And, incredible coaches in there. But with Jim, I think he just overthinks things when he's got time to sit there and think about it. I mean, he's lost 6 straight bowl games there in Michigan. There's something about that 3-week break or something where maybe he's trying too hard. He's doing something. Something just doesn't seem natural there for them.
Brandon, anything else? Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports. Great stuff, great stories on that TCU Michigan game, and also got a lot of information that Brandon does when it comes to college football, the transfer portal, and much more. Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, thanks for your time. And coming up, John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, his thoughts about last night, the scene in Cincinnati, the Bengals and the Bills, among whatever else is going on in the NFL as they head to the final weekend of the regular season.
And I got one transfer portal note I wanted to mention because I know we'll just dive in NFL, but John Paul Richardson, Oklahoma State wide receiver, now in the transfer portal. So that I believe that's 13 players into the portal for Oklahoma State. And that's notable. He had about 5 touchdowns, a handful of touchdowns last year, 500-plus yards. So that just came down, and I don't think that was necessarily one you would have pegged. So really not sure what's going on in Stillwater right now. I don't know that anybody really is. But something just feels very off there at the moment, and so that's notable because he will be in some demand.
Guy is a kind of a gritty player, makes the tough catches, gets that extra yard. Don't say it.
I'd take him on my team.
Okay.
I would take him on my team. Yeah,
hey, Baylor needs a receiver.
Yeah,
already picked up Richardson.
He's a Texan, so.
There you go.
And he is Bucky Richardson's son, tougher than nails, one of the greatest players. A&M fandom loves him. And he did make the tough catches, made the tough yards, and also could be a hell of a leader on any team as well. This is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. It's time for our weekly segment with NFL Hall of Fame columnist John McClain. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and Best in Metal, Steel, and Pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943. Read John's work at GallerySports.com and SportsRadio610.com.
We continue this 5 o'clock hour. In the opening segment today, we talked quite a bit about Damar Hamlin and the story in Cincinnati, an update, the family statement, and more. And then Dr. Neelis Goswami, who did a great job of understanding or helping us understand quite a bit of what was going on at the time with Hamlin. We're now joined by Hall of Fame columnist John McClain, has covered the NFL for decades. John, your thoughts about watching what was going on in Cincinnati?
The first thing I thought about when I heard that they were doing CPR, I thought about Chuck Hughes, the Lions receiver, who's the only player that died during the game. He died of a heart attack on October 24th, 1971, when I was a senior at Richfield High School. And I was a big football fan then, diehard Cowboy fan. I remember it wasn't as big a deal as you would have thought. His wife lives in San Antonio, and NBC contacted her today and put out a story that I retweeted. She was watching it last night as long as she could before she fell asleep. She's 77. And she said the difference in medical treatment today and what they had in 71, that was like the Stone Age. And they took Chuck Hughes off in an ambulance and continued to play the game. And so that's the first thing I thought about. I thought about Gary Kubiak. Gary Kubiak was going to die on the sideline of a stroke at a game in 2013 here, and the doctor saved his life. And he had to take a few games off. And I've seen guys paralyzed from vicious hits and didn't play again. But for some reason last night, with all the players around, huddled around, and with the looks on their faces and some of them crying and seeing the people in the stands, this one hit harder for everybody. And the people, the unsung heroes that I think will be praised as soon as we find out that Damar Hamlin's out of the woods, are the people who got out there to take care of him. Every NFL stadium has an emergency response. They go over it over and over and over. And they activated immediately. They were out there in 30 seconds, and they saved his life. You know, his heart had stopped beating, his no pulse, and he was dead. And they brought him back to life. And those people doing it under such pressure, knowing they were on national TV with a sellout crowd, with players from both teams surrounding them, watching them. You talk about people that should be praised, and you know when Hamlin is able to recover, that he's going to want to make sure to thank them.
John, a lot of conjecture about the NFL response last night and what people thought was taking too long to make the decision. Do you think that they handled it well? And is part of this the fact that no one really publicly trusts Roger Goodell not to lean towards the business interest first, but did they handle it the right way?
I think they handled it great. I saw one idiot today say Goodell should have been on TV answering questions. No, Goodell was having to communicate with Troy Vincent from the league office with the owners. And when they showed the coaches, Sean McDermott and Zach Taylor, outside one of the locker rooms, Katie Blackburn, Mike Brown, the Bengals owner's daughter who runs the team, she was there on the phone. So the last thing they need to do was answer questions about something they had no clue about. And then it got out. Joe Buck put it out that they were going to warm up for 5 minutes and come back and play. And in the news conference afterward, they said there's no way they were going to do that. Troy Vincent, the right-hand man, he played for years. He said, as soon as I saw him go down, I went into my player mode. And Joe Buck told Andrew Marchand of the New York Post today, he said that because their guy, John Perry, who is their officiating expert, heard it from somebody in the league office. Well, they shouldn't have put that out there without checking it out with somebody officially. So I thought the NFL handled it, did a great job. I think can't wait to see what they're going to do now. They could declare it a no contest. They could give them both a tie, or because there's an open date, there's a bye week between championship game and the Super Bowl. And a lot of times they play games on that weekend, and coaches and players, they don't like to bye anyway. So what they could do is go ahead and play the last weekend of the season now, and then have Buffalo and Cincinnati, who are playing for home field advantage, as well as Kansas City, play the only game on wild card weekend and move the wild card round, the division round, and the championship games back 1 week. And that would be something that would be easy to do logistically. But because if you just declared a no contest, if you give ties, there's going to be teams and fans that don't like it, but they can't complain about it because the situation is unprecedented.
John, Jalen Petrie got another interception, but the Texans also got another loss, and it's just kind of countdown now to I guess, a coaching search. I mean, what's kind of the thought process right now in Houston as far as where they are, where they thought they would be, and where they're going?
Well, most people want them to lose, so they'll get the first pick of the draft. And if they lose to the Colts, and Sam Ehlinger is now the starting quarterback, and I think that's good for the Colts because he's going to want to put on a good show for all of his friends back in Texas, his family, and his Longhorn fans. And I think he'll play well. And the Colts should win that game. The Texans' effort that they put out against the Jaguar was pathetic, and it was surprising considering how well they played in the 3 previous games. I think Lovie Smith will end up getting fired next week. I think that they'll get the first pick in the draft, have their choice of any player. When I watched Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, I knew it was Bryce Young. Then I watched C.J. Stroud come back and have his best game of the year against the number 1 team, and I thought him. And then I'm thinking, you know what, it's just best to have a choice. And that way you can have a choice of any of them. If they were to beat the Colts, who they tied in the first game, 2020, and Chicago loses to Minnesota, which it should, the Bears will get the first pick. They don't need a quarterback, so they'd say we're open for bidding. And so a lot of teams need quarterbacks, no telling what they give up. You don't want to have to give up picks to get the quarterback you want, so just do it the old-fashioned way and get your butt beat again.
John, what do you think about the Jaguars and the job Doug Peterson's done now sitting there at 8-8?
They got out to a slow start. Peterson's doing a really good job. There's several coaches, Brian Dable, Kyle Shanahan's doing a remarkable job with what's happened to the 49ers in San Francisco. Nick Sirianni did a good job with the Eagles. And I'm writing a column for Gallery Sports tomorrow with my postseason award winners. And most of them are pretty cut and dried. Coach of the year is going to be difficult. And most people are going to vote for Brian Dable. I'm leaning toward Shanahan because they won 8 in a row, and he's doing it with Brock Purdy. We saw Brock Purdy at Iowa State. Did any of us think he could play in the NFL? No. Well, I thought he might be on a practice squad at best, and they're doing a magnificent coaching job. And as far as the Texans, I just don't want them to blow the first pick. They've had it 3 times in their existence. David Carr, he's the only quarterback bombed out in 2002. 06, Mario Williams was really good. 14, Jadeveon Clowney was really good, but they let both those guys get away.
John, we appreciate you as always. Hope you had a great Christmas, holidays, and also a New Year. And Happy New Year, by the way.
And Happy New Year to you guys, and sick 'em.
Sick 'em. John McClain. GallerySports.com, Houston 610, also with us on Tuesdays in the 5:30 segment. Appreciate him for that. Man, he talked about a guy from the Lions. Back in the 70s, that collapsed and died during a game. I don't remember that. You know, of course, there was like 1 or 2 games on TV. There was no social media. There was no internet. And I did not remember the story about Hughes from the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that was well before my time. But, I did want to, I was curious to think about, because there were so many people why is the NFL taking so long? But it is. People don't trust Roger Goodell.
No, that's a big part of it.
They think that Roger Goodell was sitting there going, well, how can we do this now? But
and I don't know that they're entirely wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that there was questions asked of should we still play? I mean, I don't think it was as cut and dry as immediately they're like, yep, we're not playing, but now let's figure out the rest of it. I think there's probably some, however small or large extent, there was some conversation about do we try to play this still? And I think to me, like when you saw like the Susie Kolber and the rest of the ESPN, what was that? It was Booger and Schefter. Like it felt like they were treading water in a major way. And then Scott Van Pelt finally showed up, and they were like, "All right, Sports Center with Scott Van Pelt." And I know he just went into him and Ryan Clark basically talking, but it did feel like nobody knew what to do. Mm-hmm. And so everybody was just trying to tread water as best as they could, and they did it as best as they could. But
Ryan Clark's segment saved that part.
Yeah, well, I mean, they kept trying to get Booger to talk, and Booger's clearly like, "I have nothing to say about this." And that's how I would have been too. And I know it's like probably not what a TV exec's looking for, but like in that moment, dude, like, I'm sorry, I'm not just going to be like Mr. TV. Like, not everybody's going to be able to just talk and talk through that. And I think it was very clear that Booger was like, "I have nothing else to say on this."
And I will tell you, and cable news is very famous, and ESPN is cable news. It's cable sports news. Cable news is really, really bad about wild, harebrained speculation.
Yes.
And the crew last night did not participate in any of that, and that is a credit to those people out there that were there, like Booger McFarland. You said, like, he said, "I'm not going to sit here and speculate on what's going on. I'm telling you what I saw, what everybody goes through, what it's like to be on the field and see that. Okay, I've said that. Now let's move on." He even said, he goes, "Our network can put something else on right now."
Yeah, no, they like were trying to get off the air at various points. I do feel like, there was a couple times where I heard him in particular, and Schefter didn't really respond to that so much, but he was basically like, they need to stop the game, and we need to, like, this is ridiculous, like, get the game off of here. But obviously they had to fill what time, or they had their schedule set up the way they did. But I think for the most part, given the circumstances and the unexpectedness, that they handled it pretty well when all was said and done, as best they could at least. And I'm glad they didn't go back out there and try to play. I think that would have been an awful look, and I think it would have been awful to put those players and those fans and everybody else involved under that pressure to go out there and then have to perform. I just think it would have been so silly.
We've seen sports events interrupted for Mother Nature, obviously the earthquake during the World Series, and there's a plan, it seems like, for everything. I would think that in the booklet that the NFL has about delays, or networks have about delays, there wasn't one for something like this. Maybe someone getting carted off because of a horrible collision that led to something as it could have been a spinal cord injury, or at least there's nothing for this. And so now everybody will have at least something to look at. I thought that in the end that Ryan Clark I don't always agree with him, but I thought he was fantastic during the moment. A basketball note: Baylor tomorrow night will host TCU. Both teams just inside the top 20. Scott Drew telling reporters that LJ Cryer, who's been out, has been practicing, has passed out of concussion protocol. They desperately need all three guards. They need Cryer, they need Flagler, they need George, they need Bonner. They need all of them engaged, because right now they don't have enough firepower, and we saw that in Ames, Iowa, against Iowa State.
I actually think that a couple times during his absence, Langston Love really has played well. And
Langston Love.
That's not a surprise given how highly touted a recruit he was, but he still just has to get his literal sea legs back, because he tore his ACL last year. So I do think the future is bright for Baylor once they get any kind of defensive rhythm, but they need LJ Cryer in there, because they need, with the team they have right now, they need to kind of get you at all angles offensively, so that defense becomes easier, because the team's like, well, I don't know what we can do to stop all this barrage of shooting. They need LJ Cryer in there to do that, because he is dead-eye from three-point range.
I have a question for you. Can you all of a sudden, in the middle of the year, just all of a sudden learn how to play better defense?
I don't think it's that they don't know how to do it. I think it's that they've got guys who aren't quite invested in the way they have to do it, because they know. They're coached to do it every day. One of their assistant coach, actually two of them, John Jacobs and Bill Peterson, are two of the best guys at coaching defense that you could hire in the whole country. So I don't think it's that. I think it's part of it is, you have other things. I mentioned to Pat Nunley yesterday. Okay, Keontae George is 0 for 7. The Davion Mitchell mentality was, all right, I'm not going to make every shot, but this dude in front of me is not going to either. So I'm going to make sure that we're balanced out. And so then my scoring is not that big of a deal. Keontae George is 18. He's not that he's not unwilling to play defense. I just think that he can't get out of his own head fast enough to realize those things yet. So that just comes with experience.
They give up long runs, man. Mm-hmm. They give up big 8 to 12 to 15 point runs, it seems like, with not much in between. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina and Top 5 by 47. This is 365 Sports.
Howdy, Chet Garner here, professional guide, searching for bears in the wild. But not just any bears, oh no, a particular kind. With hundreds of thousands roaming freely in the wild, yet still hard to spot unless you know the signs. There they are, Baylor Bears. If you're a bear enthusiast or even a bear yourself, join me and let's find some bears in the wild.
Join the expedition at baylor.edu/alumni.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible and rewarding challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like our free First mobile app, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. That's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street behind the bank.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:55.
Top 5 teams that can make a big jump in 2023 now that the bowl season is wrapped up outside of the national championship game less than a week from now in Los Angeles. These are 5 teams I think can make a big jump in 2023 and contend for conference titles, contend for maybe even CFPs. And that's because I do think, then we'll talk about it here in this segment about some of the things that are moving and shaking in their own leagues. Number 5, Wisconsin. Look, this is the team with the least amount of wins. They're 7-6 on this list, but they just hired a dude as a head coach in Luke Fickell. They have a developmental quarterback in Nick Evers. They have a quarterback in Tanner Mordecai who can step in and run Phil Longo's offense right away. They're changing things up in Wisconsin, and the Big Ten outside of the top 2 in Ohio State and Michigan and maybe a little bit of Penn State right now, you can make a move if you're in the right spot, because it's not like a conference that is chock full of people dominating right now. This isn't the SEC 4 or 5 years ago where it was just so many. This is a league that you can maybe make a move in pretty quickly, especially when you have a quarterback. And I know that we're biased about Tanner Mordecai, but that's a perfect fit for what they're going to try to do for a year and then develop a guy in the next year. And Luke Fickell's got skins on the wall already. I think Wisconsin, who also wasn't really even that bad when they fired Paul Chryst, has a lot to build on. And I didn't even mention Braylon Allen will be back for the Badgers to play in that offense.
Yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he? Yeah. And Tanner Mordecai, think about him. You know, he's a dual threat guy. He can. I'm not saying he's going to run all over the place, but he is not afraid to run with it and can give you a little extra with his legs and his feet. Not just with the fact he's known for throwing for 1,000 yards or whatever he's done that huge game earlier this year and throughout his career.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some Big Ten schools that don't know quite what to make of that offense when they have to suddenly see it on a regular basis. I think that that TCU game, too, shows that the Big Ten, the whole we're going to be physical and screw all your speed and all that, like, you know, gimmicky offense. And not that the entire Big Ten's just played vanilla football or old school football by any means, but that was kind of the Michigan mantra in so many ways. We're just going to line up and be physical and run them over. And it's like TCU's like, no, we got great athletes. We're going to run right by you, pal. And so I think that, yeah, that kind of sort of mentality with Wisconsin, I mean, you're not getting Mordecai if you're not going to throw it around 50 times a game, basically. And maybe in this case, he doesn't have to do quite to that extent.
Yeah, he's got Braylon Allen. And
he'll be able to have more of a balanced attack than he's been a part of, or won't be as relied upon as he maybe has been. So, yeah, I think he's a good bridge quarterback. He'll put up big numbers. I'm sure they'll dip in the portal and bring even more talent on board. But, yeah, they're going to be a fascinating watch. And then, I mean, you look at, you know, the fact the Big Ten here in the future is going to be divisionless and kind of where does Wisconsin stack up? And if they were going to make a move, they kind of needed to make it around here because, you know, Michigan, Ohio State already have pretty healthy leads. Penn State's in that upper tier as well. And Wisconsin has been hovering around there. But you start to look around, it's like, oh, here's Iowa. And Nebraska's hiring Matt Rule. And, you know, there's this sea of change that's afoot. So, Wisconsin's not going to be left out, and I think they made a great move and a great hire.
Yeah. By the way, Mordecai's not a guy that's going to – you look at his numbers, 100 yards, but he can get you extra time with his feet and is not afraid to run with the football.
Can he get a first down on 3rd and 6?
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. That's what you want out of your quarterback. Number 4, North Carolina. Drake May's coming back, and look, they did not close the year at all how they'd want to. Three straight losses to close the year, including the bowl game and the conference championship, or maybe 4. I mean, they just did not close it the way they wanted to. But I will say this: with Drake May coming back, Mac Brown knows what he's doing when it comes to recruiting. I mean, that's clear. The portal makes it even easier. Guys are going to want to come play with Drake May. Man, they already have a couple, but there's going to be some more. They lose Josh Downs, and their key is just going to be getting better on defense, which I think they will do. And I do think things are about to get shaken up in the ACC. Unfortunately for Wake Forest, they're probably going to take a minor step back. I think Dave Clawson's a fantastic coach. I think he's going to win as long as he's at Wake Forest, and if he goes somewhere after that, he'll win there too. But I do think that problematically for them, they're losing the greatest quarterback they've ever had. They're going to step back a little bit. It looks like Clemson is in a bit of a funk, and they're trying to figure out who they are again. And so they are vulnerable. They're still going to be Clemson. They're still going to be good, but they are vulnerable. And so the ACC is opening up, and I think UNC can certainly make some noise.
It went from 9-1 to 9-5.
Yeah,
over the last month of the last month and then the bowl game. But, I mean, they'll have Drake May back, so they'll have some buzz, but they got to play better defense, bottom line. And, I think Mac's a good coach, but I don't know. He'll be interesting to monitor the next couple of years, kind of how this goes with he and the Tar Heels and his return there. But, I mean, Drake May will be the headliner, no doubt.
Yeah. Number 3, Washington, a team that has Michael Penix Jr. coming back. And just in the first year of Kalen DeBoer, they beat Texas in the Alamo Bowl. We have not gone into a lot about the Alamo Bowl, and we probably need to in the next couple days because, look, yes, they were missing their best player. And honestly, Bijan Robinson is probably the best player in 15 years that Texas has had overall. Not knocking anybody. That's how damn good he is. Bijan Robinson, he's been, really think about how talented he is. And they've got a lot of really talented players, but the best, most accomplished guy since 2009, I think, might be Bijan Robinson.
You're going back into that Colt McCoy run, and obviously Colt was an amazing college football player.
Since 2010 to now, the 10, 12 years, it's probably Bijan Robinson's their best player. But, the whole weird thing with Sark and the dude from the bowl game and all that, we'll get into that. But I do think that Washington is on the way up. They certainly seem to attract people. The Pac-12 is in flux, and you saw it this year. It was a great league all the way around. And I think Penix, another year in the offense and another year as a veteran, is going to be a key thing.
I'm waiting for that official to, at like 6 o'clock this Friday night, put out a press release saying that it was his fault that he had his. No, I'm just kidding. That was a kind of a disappointing run, or a way to bring that run to a close for the Longhorns. It felt like they had some kind of good momentum building, and then obviously not having their full disposal. But give Washington a lot of credit. I don't think Michael Penix was super great in that game by any means.
I didn't either. He threw a ton of passes, but his deep ball was bad.
Yeah, I thought that there were a lot of missed opportunities for Washington. But he's a really fun player to watch. Awesome to see him go from just a dude at Indiana that probably not a lot of people were paying attention to now Heisman mentions and all of that. So they're definitely on the right track, and they'll be, I'm sure, very, very active in retooling that roster as well. But they got some great starting points.
Yeah. Number 2, yes, I'm a homer, Florida State, but let's be real here. They've got a 6-year senior at quarterback who just had a fantastic season. They've really cleaned up in the transfer portal and added a lot of veterans to that roster, including the number 1 cornerback, the number 1 defensive lineman, the number 1 tight end, and 3 of the top offensive linemen. Filling needs that they have. Mike Norvell is really, if you look at the roster, he's built it mostly out of the portal so far. He is the true portal king, and they finished with 10 wins for the first time in a while at FSU, and the trajectory is just going up there. It's a fun place to be. I know I'm biased, but it's got vibe. It's a blue blood school, so if there's juice around it, most any coach can rope in guys to do it, and Mike Norvell is doing that right now. And with Jordan Travis coming back for a 6th year, then I think that kind of sets any team up with a veteran like that who's playing his best ball for success.
This advertisement brought to you by the Florida State Alumni Association.
Yeah.
No, they're on a good trajectory. I don't want to make too much out of beating that Oklahoma team, but that was a really good win and a good way to end the season for them. And they have a lot of momentum, like you said, and they're killing it in recruiting. So, they're definitely one you got to keep an eye on and pay attention to.
Yeah. And number 1, Notre Dame. A team that finished the year really strong and had to go through, Drew Pine at quarterback, lost Tyler Buckner. Tyler Buckner came in and played great in the bowl game. And it appears now, it's not official yet, but all indications are that Sam Hartman from Wake Forest is going to wind up at Notre Dame. If that is the case, Sam Hartman can take this Notre Dame roster, even though losing a fantastic tight end in Michael Mayer. He's so awesome. He's, he's got Gronk vibes going with him. He's a really good player. They're losing a couple of those guys, but they're still Notre Dame. If they have Sam Hartman, if you take Sam Hartman and put him in that offense with what they can do, and with Marcus Freeman's defensive mind, Notre Dame can actually pay off on some of those early season predictions that everybody gives them, because Sam Hartman, and I'm not exaggerating this, is the best quarterback that's been available in the portal. No offense to Devin Leary, who's really good. No offense to anybody else. Sam Hartman is a winner. That guy can play ball, and he is about to be in an offense that is really going to showcase him. I like that for Notre Dame, and I'm a big Sam Hartman guy, as you can tell, and I think that's going to work out well, if that's indeed what happens. But,
weren't they supposed to be in the Big Ten by now?
Yeah.
According to some people about a summer ago. Yeah, no. They're in a really good spot. I think Marcus Freeman, after a rocky start, really righted the ship and restored belief, maybe for some that were wavering initially because of just the fact that they didn't get off to this glowing golden start. But no, by the end of the year, they had really found a good groove. That was a fun bowl game against South Carolina to close things out, and a really great, win for them. So, I think Notre Dame, if like you said, they bring in a great quarterback like Sam Hartman, I definitely think that they're a team you got to pay a lot of we already pay a lot of attention to Notre Dame. If you cover college football, you can't go without mentioning them. But, I do think they're set up really well for next year.
Paxton said he had Tulane 5, USC 4, Oregon 3, Washington. So he had somebody.
There you go.
And then he had Oregon State at number 1.
Oregon State, I almost put on the list. But I need to see what DJU is going to be there first. I think he'll be good. He was up and down at Clemson. And so I need to see what he's going to do on the West Coast.
TJ Scott, be careful, Paxton, you get in trouble for questioning Paul's top 5. Yeah, there was a territorial turf war.
I mean, and there's more than 5 teams that could be, you know, fitting this bill too. I mean, there are others as well, but I think these are 5
good ones.
Yeah, that are definitely set up well. I think the one I'm shakiest on would be North Carolina, because I think that's pretty much all Drake May hype, for next year. But they have an argument because he's going to be a reason they get a lot of attention now, despite the really ugly kind of stretch run, even though there were some close games, mixed in there. But, yeah, he's going to get them a ton of attention. And the other 4, I mean, yeah, they're all set up super well. They'll all be right there squarely in the mix, you would think. It's just a matter of, how quickly can Wisconsin, get into whatever tier they want to jump into right away. How quickly can Luke Fickell establish something there? But they'll be good, no doubt.
As Clint Moses, Oregon State fan, said, hey, it's going to be hard for us to improve on maybe a top 10 finish.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a great year. I think most people realize that, but I don't know. I think there's also a lot of people that don't realize just how good Oregon State was this year. They were damn good, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Damian Martinez continues to do. And, yeah, you bring in DJU now, and I mean, you're not going to probably be asking him to win games by himself. I think that, with him now, that's not a fragile handle with care, but you saw the good, the bad, and a lot of ugly at Clemson, and I think that Oregon State's coaching staff's smart enough to know how to work around that and compliment him well, so that'll be a fun group to watch.
All right, thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Garrett Ross, Jacob Wilson, Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter, and also Levi Caraway tonight at 10:30. Sports Tonight at 10:30 on the CW channel. More and more everywhere I go, I have somebody mention it, and we appreciate those of you who watch that, and also those of you who watch us during the afternoon here from 3 until 6 Central Time. Subscribe. We appreciate it. Like the button, or push the like button when you can, and spread the word. For Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina, for our great sponsors, it's a new year, and we're 2 days into it as far as shows, and back tomorrow. Matthew Pallage, Baylor Defensive Coordinator, will join us live. And this is 365 Sports. Good night.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the cost of healthcare bills. When you need an MRI, ask your doctor for an Ideal MRI. Visit us at idealmri.com or call us at 833-IDEAL-MRI.